Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. Kindly confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, Kevin, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. So welcome to the Resource Mobilization and Grants Management Training. My name is Kevina Zeni from Training Center in Communication, which is a capacity building trust based at the University of Nairobi, Chiromo campus. And over the next 2 days, we're going to explore resource mobilization strategies. We're going to explore how to identify funding opportunities, how to develop competitive proposals, and also manage grants responsibly. And to take us through this is going to be our research capacity advisor, Dr. Nicholas Outa, who has trained over 10,000 researchers through workshops in scientific writing, grant proposal development, research ethics, and other topics. And before I welcome him to facilitate the session, I have a few housekeeping reminders. This training will run from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. For the 2 days, and we're going to have a short health break at around 10 to 11:10. The second reminder is to keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking or have been asked to speak. And then please use the chat to ask questions or indicate if you'd like to contribute, but you're also free to unmute if you're asked to contribute. And the certificates of participation are going to be issued to participants who attend the training in full, in line with our certification guidelines. So I'd now like to welcome our facilitator, Dr. Nicholas Outa, to take us through the session. Welcome, Dr. Outa.
Well. Thank you, Kevina. That confirms if I'm audible enough. I'm trying to, fix my microphone just to see my earphones just to be sure that. Am I audible enough, Kevina?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you. So I just wanted the participants to put a voice to a face to the voice that they will be, listening to for the next 2 days. So that's why I have switched on my video. So I'll just switch it off once I'm done with my introduction, and then I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So one of the things that is happening in Africa and I think also in Southeast Asia, as we will see, is that grants, we are getting very few projects funded, and so we are running fewer projects compared to other parts of the world. And part of it is not that we don't know how to write, but part of it is also because we don't know where to look for these opportunities. And even when we look for these opportunities, do we know how to respond to them? If they are awarded to us, let's say we write proposals and we get funded, do we even know how to manage the grants? So those are some of the questions that we are asking ourselves today. And as we will go through the session, maybe I might not answer all of them, but we will try as much as we can to answer as many of them as possible. The other thing that also we will touch on is consultancies, because scholars who are here can agree that resource mobilization does not only, entail writing fundamental project proposals or these kind of things, but it also part of it is consultancy. It's what we just call private consultancy, where you work either of your own company, or you can work as an individual researcher or an individual consultant, or if you are affiliated to a university or a research institution, then some of these universities and research institutions also allow you to work as a consultant or do consultancies for organizations outside your institution. So basically, we will look at grant proposal writing, but we'll also go ahead and throw in a few things about consultancies, because that is part of grant mobilization. So I will switch off my video so that it does not interfere with people's bandwidth, and then I will start sharing my screen. So I also request that all of us will switch off or keep our videos off unless we are asked to contribute or we are asked to switch it on. So again, as already said, I am Dr. Nicholas Outa. I am a research capacity advisor at Training Center in Communication. I have been a trainer in scientific writing and communication since 2019. I started off, of course, at TCC as a trainee, then I became trained, and then I now, advanced in other things. So basically, my background, I have a PhD in fisheries and aquaculture from Sena University, where I also work as a lecturer. So my background is fisheries and aquaculture. So specifically, I'm interested in climate smart aquaculture production systems. So part of the materials and part of the examples I will be giving will be from the projects we are currently writing, or the ones that we submitted and won. So that will also form the basis of some of the examples or demonstrations that I will give. And also maybe some calls that are still active, I can also bring them to your attention. The only thing is mostly I am alive to those calls that are relevant to my field. So I know in the consortium of, so in this group, there are people who are also from maybe a different background, but generally agriculture still fits within aquaculture. So today and tomorrow, we will be talking about resource mobilization and grants management, and also a bit of consultancy, as I say. So I also want this to be as interactive as possible. We know that there are people who are with different experiences on this call. So I know people have had different experiences trying to mobilize funding and stuff like this. So we will also benefit from your experiences. But then we must start first by understanding the resource mobilization. What is resource mobilization actually? Because then we talk about it like it's a buzzword where people talk about, no, I'm doing resource mobilization, but what does it actually mean? So resource mobilization is the strategic process of identifying, securing, managing, and sustaining financial and non-financial resources needed to achieve institutional or project objectives. When we talk about resource mobilization, we are not just talking about money. And I think that is one thing we need to agree on. We are not just talking about money. So it is any resource that can be able to help us achieve something or can help us move the institution forward. So it could be financial resources. So this could include grants, donations, investments, contracts. So that is part of resource mobilization. So you can do resource mobilization by looking for financial resources. Okay. But there is also human resources. So you can also mobilize human resources through like researchers, staff, volunteers, mentors. So you have an institution, but then you realize I need a team to help me move it, or I need a team to help me make this work. So in that case, then you can go out and say, I don't have the money now, but then I need, if you could contribute in terms of maybe just donating one of your researchers to one institution, that will be a valuable resource. So I want us to start from the beginning, thinking through resource mobilization. It's not just involving financial resources. So there's the financial resources. There's also infrastructure development, where you can write a grant proposal, for example, but you don't ask for money. You tell them, hey, what I need, I have a laboratory, for example, it's not equipped, or I have some instruments that I use, the equipment, but either they are old or they are not working. So I would want that to be part of, I would want that to be a resource that can be able to help. Then there are also partnerships and networks. So collaborations, institutions, and communities can also be resources. Okay, so if you go out and partner with other institutions, or you go out and partner with communities, and then in the process you end up developing something, then that's a resource. So the community becomes a resource. Any collaborator or institutions that you work with become a resource. Okay. Then there's knowledge and data. So we have research outputs, database, intellectual property. So this is also a resource that can be mobilized and can help you run your institution or implement a project. We have also technology and innovation, policy advocacy support. So let's say we are working or there's something, let's say in the field of aquaculture. So we are talking about, let's say, fish feeds, because we know fish feeds contribute to about 50 to 60% of the cost of production in aquaculture. We say, is it possible for us to mobilize and work with county governments or government institutions or regulatory institutions to, get policies around aquaculture or get policies around a specific aspect to make things work within the sector? Or you could talk about, let's say, something like tax exemption, for example. So this will end up facilitating your work, but it is not necessarily financial support. It's not necessarily money. Okay, so basically, fundraising. There's a difference between fundraising and resource mobilization. So fundraising is just raising money for a specific project. So it's usually short term. It's often reactive and focuses on money only. So that is when somebody says, I'm fundraising for this activity, they're just looking for money to implement a specific project or to do a specific initiative. But resource mobilization goes beyond just the short term. So it is usually strategic acquisition and management of multiple resources. So like when you are writing a grant proposal, for example, part of what you are looking at is money, because then you are writing and sending it out so that the donor or the funders will be able to send you money or give you money to run the project. But in the process, you have institutions that you are collaborating with, or you have specific researchers you're collaborating with, or communities you are working. So it means that it goes beyond just the money. So it means you are mobilizing resources, not necessarily just money at all. Okay. So, and it's always long-term and proactive. You see, fundraising is mostly reactive. So we say, we don't have money to do this and that. Why don't we look for money? But fundraising is not reactive, it's proactive. So you go out there intentionally with a very clear goal of what you want to do and also thinking about sustainability. Okay. So it focuses on value creation and sustainability. I think that is one of the things I have said already. So what goes on within the resource mobilization ecosystem? Okay. So because then we say resource mobilization is about sustainability. So resource mobilization is not just fundraising for the short term, but resource mobilization, I have said, is a sustainable way of getting resources, money, basically other resources for a long-term investment, so to speak. So the first is identify needs and priorities. So you need to, within your field. So let's say you are writing in the field of medicine. It's good to sit down and prioritize the needs within the sector you are working in. Then map and engage stakeholders. We have seen these days there's a call we are responding to, and they are saying that there has to be evidence that even at the proposal writing stage, you have already started involving communities. So they're saying if there's no evidence of community development or co-creation, then they're not considering your proposal. Okay. So and many funders are now going in that direction. So they insist in involving people from the beginning. So it means that then in that case, then after you have known the priorities and the needs of these people or the community you want to work with, or the community can be anything. It could be research community or just community of farmers or community of individuals. Then you develop proposals and partnerships after mapping out this and engaging these stakeholders. Then you secure resources. So resources, we said financial and non-financial. Okay. Then you implement the project. Then you monitor and evaluate. Then there is always stewardship and relationship management. What happens is after we have worked with in a consortium. So there's a project that we were running and it ended in April actually. So it had 16 partners in that consortium from different parts of the world. So it means that just beyond the project, even when the project ends, you still need to have a way of working together, or you still need to have a way of keeping these contacts, because the next time one of the consortium members comes across an interesting call, then they would reach out and say, okay, we worked on this together. I think I've seen a related call. Why can't we, work on something? Okay. Then sustain and grow for future funding. So this sustainability plan, sometimes you find some scholars forget about it, and it's something that is very important, especially when the proposal is now being reviewed. Okay, so when your proposal is being reviewed, if it lands on the desk of a reviewer, for example, I review for the research. I don't know. I've forgotten the name. It's a difficult name. The research management institution in Serbia. I've reviewed for them for 2 years, sometimes 3 or sometimes 4 projects. And when they bring it out, or when they send them to us, part of what they send is, of course, the template. Where you're going to fit in your review comments. But then sustainability is a key part of that template, because then it scores a lot. They say that we don't want to be funding people year in, year out without seeing any impact, or without seeing adoption and scale and upscaling of these technologies. So if you demonstrate very well how the project, or how the innovation will be sustained beyond the funding of the project, then that scores. So here we are still just understanding resource mobilization. We've not started writing our proposal, because then you need this information so that when you start writing, you know how to write and what to write. Otherwise, you will just be, doing things that you don't maybe understand quite well. But why does resource mobilization matter in research? Why is it important for us to understand and even do resource mobilization? Okay. So the reality is that research today is increasingly competitive, collaborative, interdisciplinary, and outcome oriented. That is the reality. So even as you come up with these very nice concepts, don't forget about them. So the competitiveness makes it very difficult for lack of a better word, for very average proposals to go through. Okay, so because then everyone is looking for this money. So let's say there is money from, let's say, World Bank, for example. So there's a call from World Bank. You can be sure that they get thousands and thousands of calls, or proposals. So what they look at is, how good is your idea? How novel is your idea? And how is the problem that you have stated really, is it an urgent problem? And how are you going to solve that problem through the interventions that you are proposing? Okay, but then it is also true that research is becoming collaborative and interdisciplinary. As I said, most of the calls these days will come with very clear instructions that it has to be multi-institutional and sometimes even multinational. So you are told that if you have a consortium comprising of researchers from different backgrounds and from different countries and of different gender, for example, then you stand a better chance than someone who has just a consortium of people from the same country or same institution. So even as you start thinking of applying for grants and proposals, just make sure that you think of collaboration, and you need to come up with a very collaborative consortium that reflects that this is a team that is interdisciplinary. So you have to have people from different fields. If you are writing something on aquaculture, let's say we are writing about climate smart aquaculture production system. In your proposal, you must demonstrate that, fine, I am an aquaculture scientist. I understand how aquaculture works. So I understand how fish grows, what the conditions that fish require, and that is what I'm going to bring on the table. But if we are going to scale this up, or if we are going to push this project to the community for them to adopt this technology, then we must get other people from other disciplines. Okay, so that's why when you are forming a consortium, you must explain the role of each member of that consortium. Okay, so if you are going to develop business, let's say you are going to develop business ideas or you are going to support startups, you can't tell me that you have a consortium of only aquaculture scientists without anyone in business or economics or rural development or business management. Or, it becomes very difficult. So, when you are thinking of how then to form this consortium, then start thinking through that. It has to be collaborative, it has to be interdisciplinary, and it is also outcome oriented. Okay. So when you are writing a proposal, look at the objectives of the funder. Okay. It's not just about you. They also have an outcome to achieve. So if the outcome is to increase food security, or if the outcome if the outcome is to enhance household income, then make sure that your proposal speaks to that. Okay, and the other reality is that universities alone cannot finance research. And I'll talk about the Kenyan context, for example. University rarely has money for research, and that's why researchers have to keep writing, writing, and writing all the time, because the university does not have enough money to, and even if they do, it could be some very little money that is not able to do anything. So that's the reality we have. Okay, but again, as I said, that funding agencies increasingly require partnerships. I think I've talked about this. Co-funding. Now, co-funding is where I have seen several projects where you are told, how much are you contributing? Okay. So this co-funding should not be stressful to you. Sometimes you say, okay, they want us to contribute something, but then we don't have anything. That's why we are looking for this money. Co-funding can be in terms of even the time, the expertise we are bringing on board. If there's already existing equipment at the university or the research institution, these are things you can always mention and say that this is our contribution. So if you're going to give us $1 million, this is the contribution we are bringing. Or if you can even co-fund just by giving money. So if your university has the capacity to co-fund, then these are things that these funding agencies are looking for. Okay. So partnerships, I talked about that. Co-funding, there is stakeholder engagement. So we will look at the project approach when we will start writing our project, when we will get into how then to write the different sections. And stakeholder engagement is very important. If your approach does not include stakeholders, and this is where research or these donors have realized that sometimes researchers just come up with solutions without engaging the communities. I'll give you an example. There's a time in 2014, 2015, I was working with a Japanese-funded project around Lake Victoria. For those who are in Kenya, Kisumu. So there's a problem in Lake Victoria, and this problem is about drinking water. So for those who come from here, sometimes you go to the lake and you find the water is green. It looks like pea soup. It is very green. So that green substance is algae, and basically it's called microcystis. So it is cyanobacteria that produces toxin, and this toxin is called microcystin. You don't have to focus on all those things. These are just terms to scare myself. But what I'm saying is this is a problem, and the presence of this algae in water makes access to drinking water difficult and also dangerous, because when you drink it, research has shown that it can lead to cancer. So the project decided that we are going to create to come up with the technology. In fact, the technology was called biophase, and I was the one actually who was the one that led supervised the construction of the biofence. It's a very simple technology. I'm not going to explain it here, but this biofence was able to trap these algal cells and remove it from the water by up to 90%, based on the data that we collected. Now, we constructed this, and then 1 year after the end of the project, when I went back to that beach, that thing was not there. The pump had been taken, The pump had been taken, the solar, it was a solar pump, so the solar pump was gone, the tanks were gone, the charcoal pocket itself was gone. The site house was already vandalized. So when I asked, because in Kenya there is what we call the BMU, Beach Management Unit. So this was under the custody of Beach Management Unit in that specific beach. They said that there was a problem because then people said that that thing was blocking the beach. It was blocking access to their access to water. But then when the project had ended, so I was thinking, is it because we just went to this people and told them that we have a technology that can help sieve this water without asking them for their priorities? Because if today I bring you a chair in your house and you already have enough chairs, and maybe you just have some little space to squeeze in one or two other chairs, you will tell me, yeah, fine, thank you for the chair. But maybe in reality, you needed a bed more than that chair. So if I had come to ask you first, you'd say, oh, fine, thank you. I know you want to offer a chair, but I don't want a chair. What I want is a bed. So if you can bring me a bed, that would help me a lot. So community engagement is a very good thing. And sustainability plan and impact evidence. So sustainability plan is always part of what goes into your proposal to show, because the donors also don't want to show them that you will always be relying on donations and funding all the time. They want you to demonstrate to them that even if I'm not funded, the money you are giving me, this is how then it is going to multiply, or this is how it is going to be sustained, so that the project lives beyond the funding itself. Okay. But why do researchers fail when they are looking for money? Many researchers believe that good science automatically gets funded. That's not the truth. You can write very good science, but then if you don't do the right thing, let's say you have a very good technology that is going, like the one that we had that was going to solve the problem of drinking water for riparian communities in Kenya. But then it never went anywhere. Fine, the funding came, but it never went anywhere because we were not able to, we didn't have a very clear sustainability plan. But the reality is that funding decisions evaluate the need, innovation, capacity, partnerships, impact, feasibility, and sustainability. So these are things you need to think through, even as you try to develop your own proposals for funding. Is there a need? Okay, I want to check, is there a need or is there a problem? How urgent or how important is this problem? Who is affected? Who will be relieved when this problem is solved, for example? Is there an innovative way of doing things? So innovation does not really just have to be a discovery or an invention. No. Innovation could just be even about partnerships. So someone would say, okay, that was a very innovative way of looking at things. Okay, so look at that. Capacity. If you're an institution that does not have the capacity to carry out the research or whatever proposal you are writing, then it's difficult for it to go through. And that's why when you're applying for proposals, part of the attachments will be institutional support letter from institution, and the consortium. In the consortium, you have to list the names, of course, and also share their CVs. So we will look through the CVs and see that, fine, part of what you are proposing is business incubation or trying to, advise or train the youth within the spaces of startups. But then we realize you don't have anyone with that kind of skill. Then we'll say, this team lacks the capacity. You could have a very good idea, but if you lack the capacity, it's not going anywhere. Okay. The other thing is about partnerships. I've talked about this. So how is the consortium constituted? Does it have people from different countries? Does it have people of different gender? If you are writing a proposal and you are all women, it depends. Maybe if it is an all women proposal, there are those that are very specific that this one only females are allowed to apply. But if it is one that is open, then make sure the gender is mixed in there. Okay. So if you have a team member or a colleague or someone, let's say living with disability, don't leave them out. Just put them there if there is something they are going to contribute, so that they see your team is well constituted. If you have someone who is a lady, for example, bring in a lady, bring in a young scientist. These are the dynamics that sometimes when we are now evaluating the consortium, we look at, does it have, how young are these? Is there any chance of a younger scholar or a young scientist or a young researcher being mentored through this proposal? Okay, so if we do the funding, are there young scholars within the consortium who will benefit in terms of resources and also in terms of capacity building and training? So if we see that you are all old professors who are applying for this, and there are no young people, then we look at what is the sustainability plan, or even of your career as a professor. Okay, then the funding landscape is highly competitive. And this is something I will keep repeating, that it is highly competitive, and that's why you have to brace yourself. On, when was this? On Wednesday, last week, actually, we received an email from EU that we had failed to secure, or we had failed to get funding for a project that we had written. The budget was almost, was how much? Was 1.5 million US dollars. So we had several consortium members, and we were. So the truth, what I'm saying is, you will not get all the grants that you send out a proposal for. So what will happen is, you will get some, you will miss out on some. But that should not kill your spirit. Keep trying, keep pushing, and you will definitely start getting them. Okay, and when you start, that's how it is. So there are more researchers and there are fewer opportunities. That is the reality. So when people see that IFAD, for example, or MasterCard Foundation has released a call, so many people are going to apply. Okay? Collaboration is key. I'm not going to talk about this again. Funders prefer strong partnerships and multidisciplinary teams. Anytime you are coming out the consortium, and that's why I said there are things we are getting out of the way before we get into the actual writing. Okay? Results and impact driven, clear outcomes and measurable impact are essential. Okay, so in your proposal, in the log frame or in your section where you write theory of change, you must demonstrate very clearly what outcomes will be out of this, how will you measure them, and what impact will they have. Okay, then sustainability. Okay, so long-term benefits and scalability are increasingly required. Okay, so sustainability and also scalability is very important when you are writing grant proposals. Okay, so the donor will look at, is this just going to end with the or what are the chances of the farmers or the community members adopting this technology and scaling it up? If you come up with a very good technology, but then as a reviewer, I feel this is too complicated for a normal smallholder farmer, then I'll say, oh yeah, good technology, but I don't think this is scalable or this is going to be. So think through. And sometimes we want very complex things. It becomes very difficult for you to convince me that a farmer in rural Kenya will be able to work and understand a very complicated internet-based application or internet-based system. So you need to think about scalability, and sustainability and scalability go together. Okay, if you have a very nice sustainability plan, then you know that as the sustainability continues, adoption also takes place. Okay, because then this project is going to live beyond. So let's say you are funded for 2 years. They will ask you, what is the plan for the next 5 years, for the next 2 years after the funding? Okay, so then after the end of this project, is this going to end just when the funding ends, or is there a way it will go beyond this funding? Okay, and even if you can do resource mobilization. Okay, global challenges, local solutions. Okay, this is where my mentor calls it globalization. So think globally, act locally. Okay, funders want research that address real world problems. Okay, so let's say you want to write that you are doing some research on pain management among cancer patients, as an example. you must convince us that this is solving a real world problem. I think funders are no longer interested in these theoretical things that you just want to develop for the sake of research. Fine, there is funding that can be specifically just for research, and it's not going out there to communities. There's no need for scalability of these things. But if you're writing for within the field, within a research area that is going to work with communities and requires them to adopt or work with a specific technology, then make sure that it is something that is real. Okay. Now we also the other thing is now technology and innovation. So data tools, data and innovation strengthens competitiveness. Okay. So when you are writing a proposal and you see these days there's something that is called data management plan, and most proposals will come with it. Most funders will tell you that this is the data management plan. We are giving it to you so that you can customize it or you can contextualize it. So how are you going to handle data? This is an example. Let's say you are writing a proposal that you want to go out and you want to go out and understand something. So let's say it is a cross-sectional study or a longitudinal study where you are going to recruit certain households and apply a specific treatment, for example, and then follow the impact over the years. And then you are telling me that you are going to do a structured questionnaire, as an example. And then you are going out with questionnaire, printed out on papers, and then you are still going to fill them in manually. If I'm reviewing your work and I see that as your methodology, as your approach, then I will know that you are not in touch with technology, and I'll just throw out your work, because then I will not even want to explain to you how to use Kobo Collect or Keto, or I will not want to go into that direction. So I will say the team does not know how to handle data, or the team is not innovative in their data collection procedure. So these are the things that we also need to understand. But then there is also the resource mobilization cycle. This is part of what we've talked about a little bit, but we need to, unpack it even further. Okay, so we need to start by institutional vision and priorities. So let's say you're working for a university. You want to think, what is the vision and priorities of my university or my institution or the institution I'm working for? Or if you're an individual, then look at what you prioritize, especially when you are before you go out. So this is how it starts. So institutional and vision and priorities. Then you identify needs. I think we've talked about identifying needs. Then resource mapping. Then prospect identification. Relationship building. So relationship building is where you are now going to develop. You are going to reach out to partners so that you can collaborate and form a consortium. Now, this part, as I said, is very important. Okay. So prospect identification sometimes comes when you could get a call from, I'm going to share with you a few places where I always go out looking for these grant proposals from different fields. So after you have identified a specific proposal that you think, or a call that you think is interesting, then you develop, you build a relationship, or you build a collaboration, or you build a consortium. Okay. Then after that, then we go into proposal development. So you develop the proposal. We will talk about how then we develop a proposal. After developing the proposal, then you are given the proposal. You are awarded. So there is the grant award. So you get the grant and money is sent. Okay. Then after that, you do the implementation. So implementation is now the actual activity in the field. Then monitoring and evaluation. Just looking at the impact, how much did we put in, or how much effort, or how much resources did we throw in, how much did we get out, okay, in terms of impact and in terms of evidences that can be seen. Then reporting and accountability. Now, reporting is both financial and technical reporting. And one of the funders that are always very strict when it comes to reporting is the EU. So if you have an EU funded project, then you must, from the onset, and this is what I always tell people, make sure if you are managing a very big project, make sure you have an accountant on board. In fact, it will even help if this accountant is also an auditor, okay? So that every time you spend money, he will tell you whether that is eligible cost or it is ineligible. You don't want to, at the end of the project, that you already spent like, let's say $1,000 on costs that are not eligible. You will have a problem when the auditors come around. They will ask you, how did you spend this? Was this eligible within the project? Was it not? So when you are developing partnerships, make sure that you have an accountant or an auditor on board. Okay. Then there's the stewardship and communication. And I think this is part of what we forget about. Okay. So we do implementation, we collect data, and then at the end of the day, we will do M&E and learning. And there's a way it's called now these days. There's learning that is somewhere there. Now, we need to communicate research, and we communicate research through different ways. As I said, proposal writing is only one step in a much larger funding ecosystem. So that is just one part. Once you get the money, then there is a lot of other things that you need to do. Okay. So successful researchers plan, build relationships, and deliver results consistently. Okay. Future funding will depend also on how you deliver this specific grant that you got. Okay. So because you find, let's say, like EU, for example, or MasterCard Foundation or Gates Foundation, I'm just giving examples here. What happens is if you meddle with their money, the institution will pay. So if you're affiliated to a university and you use their money in a way that is not appropriate, they will go to the university and tell them you need to refund us $1 million. Okay. I don't know where that will come from. So then after that, they will blacklist your university. Now the problem is it is just one researcher who embezzled funds, but now the entire university is blacklisted. That's why it is important that we think beyond ourselves. So if you want to embezzle funds just to say, okay, I'm already retiring, so I can get this 100 million and just disappear with it. The problem is maybe if you are not followed around, then they will follow the university. And because the university is an institution and it's sometimes public, then the university will have to find a way of dealing with this. And then they will say, this is the last time we are funding researchers from this university because of ABCD. Okay? So that future funding is important. So make sure when you get the money, you implement what is in the proposal. Okay? Make sure you implement what is in the proposal. There is an example when you are writing one of our proposals, and we had a partner from Germany. This partner had worked with a Kenyan university that I will not mention, and they didn't like the way they worked. This university was very difficult. There was a lot of bureaucracy and also a bit of sabotage there because the researchers from that university were not even submitting their proposal, their reports in time, and the financial report was very difficult to handle. So this partner from Germany said, we are looking for a university. And then when we started fronting, because they said they needed 3 universities from Kenya and others from elsewhere. So because they reached out to my mentor, he sent out an email, listing some universities. And they came back and said, we are not working with these specific universities because of ABCD. Now the money came. We ran the project for 4 years. Now this university did not get funding just because of what they had done before. So be diligent, do your work, and do a good job. Okay. Now the benefits of following this cycle is stronger proposal, higher success rate, better partnerships, sustainable funding, and greater research impact. So what happens is if you know how to identify needs, for example, and resource mapping, the first one, institutional vision and priorities, is important because you don't want to write a proposal and then when you submit it for funding, they look at it. Let's say your university is only focusing on medicine. So you are maybe you are in the field of medical science. So your university is a university that only does medicine, for example. And then you write a very nice proposal on water treatment. Unless you can link it to health or unless you can link it to medicine, they will look at it and say, yeah, this is not in line with the priorities of this university or with the vision of these universities. Oh, another example, and this might be a very difficult example, but I'll just give it anyway. So let's say you are working with a religious affiliated university. So there are universities that are, maybe sponsored by religious institutions, or they are run by those religious institutions. So let us say, as an example, that your university does not, maybe is not, the university goal is that we don't work with people or with people who are, let's say, gay or with a different sexual orientation, as an example. And then you end up writing a proposal that is going to, let's say you want to do a research on LGBTQ, for example, and your university that's not a priority, or it is against their vision. Then you have seen a very good proposal, you've written it, but it does not align with the vision of your university. So the university will not even give you a letter of support. You will go to the vice chancellor and they will tell you, I've read through the concept. This goes against the morals of this university, so we are not going for this. So that's why it's always good to evaluate and see, does it align with the priorities of my university? Okay. Otherwise, you will waste a lot of money and resources developing a proposal, and then you end up this proposal being thrown back to you, and then you are told, yeah, we cannot fund this because clearly the university does not work with these people. So that's one thing I wanted to bring out. Now, so then there is how do we build a fundraising strategy? Okay, so we need a strategy where we will, always be trying, and we have a strategy like where with my team we have a small team at our department where we say there has at any given time we must always be having a proposal out there being reviewed at any given time. There is no time we don't have 3 or even 4 projects out there being either reviewed or being considered. So we make them, we write them and send them out. Now, the other good thing about proposals is, or this concept is, if you develop a very nice concept, you can send it to different calls. You are just going to change a few things here and there. Proposals are not like manuscripts where once you send it to one journal, you have to wait for the outcome before you send it elsewhere. No, you can write a very nice proposal or a very nice concept, and it gets funded. And then you see another call that speaks to exactly the same the same area that you wrote, or the same topic or the same idea. You just play around with it a little bit just to fit into the exact call that you are applying for, and then the same idea goes. So they will not say that this was already funded by so and so, we are not funding it, unless it is an area that has now been overfunded. Then they will say this has been maybe not by us, but it has already been overfunded, so there's no need of throwing money there again. I'll give an example with Lake Victoria, for example. Lake Victoria has swallowed so many millions, and the situation is not the same. It's the same. In fact, the situation maybe is even getting worse. So right now, if you write a proposal that you want to do research on water quality or ecology of Lake Victoria, or something like this, they will tell you, we are not keen on funding that because there's a lot that has been, a lot of money has been thrown into Lake Victoria to address those challenges, but the challenges still persist. So you need to think about that, okay? Assess your situation. So fundraising strategy is a planned approach to identify, attract, and secure the resources needed to achieve your research and institutional goals sustainably, okay? So we said that fundraising or resource mobilization is where we are thinking long-term, okay? So what are the key steps in building a fundraising strategy? One is assess your situation. So review mission, goals, and resource needs. I think I talked about this already. You don't want to write a proposal that does not align with the goals of your university, okay? Analyze strengths, gaps, and assets, and understand your funding history. This is both for individual and institutional grants. There are people who work as individuals. They write proposals for funding as individuals and not necessarily affiliated to institutions. I'm not saying that is not possible. The only thing is sometimes it becomes a bit difficult because some institutions will tell you that we are uncomfortable funding private companies, or we are uncomfortable funding private individuals. So you must be affiliated to a university or an institution of research, or you have to be affiliated to an institution. And some of them even say that we only work with government institutions. So whatever I'm talking about assessing your situation, you can assess your situation as an institution or as an individual, depending on where you're working from. Then identify opportunities, okay? So you need to get potential funders and research on them, see their vision, their mission, all these things, so that you see when I approach them, this is what they want to achieve. So I'll help them achieve that, and in the process, they're going to fund my work, okay? Match funder priorities with your goals and explore diverse funding sources. So if the goal is to, and again, I'm giving examples from Lake Victoria. One of the things that is now happening in Lake Victoria is cage fish farming. I know some of you, or most of you, some of you I know are even having fish cages in Lake Victoria. So fish cage farming is something that is really, taking shape in Lake Victoria. It's really expanding very rapidly. And if the goal is to enhance food security through cage aquaculture, then make sure that when you are writing, let's say the donor, the main focus of the donor is to enhance food security among smallholder farmers or among rural communities. You need to tell me how enhancing cage aquaculture, or how implementing a specific innovative way of growing fish is going to enhance that food security. Otherwise, if that link is missing, then I'll say, yeah, you are not positioned well enough for me to fund you. Okay? Then define your value proposition. Okay? Articulate your unique value. When you are writing your proposals, look at what the institution has. It could be equipment, it could be expertise, it could be, anything else. Okay? Then highlight impact and outcomes and tell a compelling research story. Okay? That is very important. If you don't tell a compelling story from top to bottom and all these things, so basically, if you don't tell me what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you will do it, where you will do it, who will be involved, and so what. If I don't get those answered very clearly, it's going to be very difficult. Okay? And then you also need to develop funding approaches. Okay? So choose funding, suitable funding instruments, plan engagement strategies, and build partnerships and networks. Okay? It's important. And I will keep repeating so that if you don't pick anything out of this course, make sure you pick that you must have partnerships, and these have to be valuable partnerships. You don't just want to work with institutions for the sake of working with them, or you don't just want to partner with scholars or other researchers for the sake of partnering with them, but you want partnerships that bring value to the consortium. Okay? Implement and engage. So engage funders consistently, submit high quality proposals, cultivate long-term relationships. Now, these long-term relationships is both with the funders and also with the consortium members that you work with. What happens is sometimes you find that you worked as part of a consortium and you worked so well that a certain consortium member felt like they would want to work with you again. So that long-term relationship is important, so that if somebody sees something, they will say, yeah, there's this researcher that we worked with who did a very good job. Or they would say, okay, there's this institution that we worked with. That. So make sure, again, as I said, if you're part of a consortium, don't be someone who is very difficult to work with. Okay? So both institutional and also individual. So even at individual level, try to do a good job that people would want to work with you again. Okay? But I think we need this funding strategy because it provides direction and focus, helps us also prioritize opportunities. So there are quite a bit of calls. There are so many calls these days. But if you don't have a strategy, then you might end up throwing in everywhere, everything everywhere, and nothing will land on your table at the end of the day. Okay? And then I think we've talked about this. I'm not going to repeat this part of what I have talked about. But what are the global trends in research funding? We really need to understand what the global trends are. Okay, it is part of what I've talked about, but I think I want to bring it out even more because then we need to see where we stand, where we stand as Africa. Because if you can see that Africa only gets 5% of global research funding, in fact, even less. Saying that we get even less. Okay, so the key trends shaping research funding is that there is increased competition. I think I talked about this. More researchers, more proposals, scarce resources. So that is a global thing. So this is not something that we are saying that we can deal with this. Not that we can deal with it, but this is what is happening. So we just have to find innovative ways that can help us work around it. Okay. So then there is there is shift to impact. I said that now funders prioritize measurable impact and real world solutions. So if you are going to develop just some abstract things or abstract ideas that people cannot really see the impact, then there is a difficult problem for you, because then most funders will not be interested in that. Digital transformation, I talked about this. There's data, there's AI, and digital tools as reshaping research and funding. Okay. So these days, by the way, even in the field of aquaculture, you will be asked, there's something called IoT. I think those who are in the space of computer engineering, I don't know, will know Internet of Things. So if you write and say, for example, that I'm writing so that we can develop what we call one of our projects that we also worked on that was EU funded. We developed something called a DST, Decision Support Tool, for farmers and for smallholder farmers specifically, so that could help them manage their farms in terms of this decision support tool is able to pick information through a probe from the fish pond or from the farm, because then we had sensors, that soil sensors that were put within the farm. So when the soil sensors sent a signal to the decision support tool, which was an app, that there is a need for you to water the crops, then you just go and open the irrigation system, and then it irrigates. And when it is enough, then you will be told the humidity is okay, you can close the irrigation system. Now, there's a way then, if we could work towards now automating the opening and closing of the irrigation system. So you see now, when a donor sees that you are working towards all these things, you have AI integrated, you have this Internet of Things and other things, then that enhances the chances of you getting something. But the other thing is also about data. Data is the new gold. That's what they say. So how are you going to handle data? Because let's say you are going to do a project that is going to work with the communities. Maybe you are going to do a longitudinal study or a mixed method or a mixed study, something like this. So one, you are going to get a lot of data that is going to come specifically to the project. So this data could include sometimes personal data, including even videos and photos of interview sessions and stuff like this. So you must convince the donor beyond reasonable doubt that you have a very good data management plan that will help you handle and store the data. Okay. Then there is collaboration and partnership. So yeah, I've talked about it, that interdisciplinary and cross-sector collaborations are key. These ones are key. But what I wanted us to look at is in the middle a little bit. But then what we need to look at, as I say, that what is in the middle. I just wanted to show you that there was 2.3 trillion global research funding that was estimated in 2023. But you see, Africa is only getting 5% of it, or less than 5%. So North America takes 35, Europe takes 30, Asia and the Pacific takes 25. Latin America and Africa are really underfunded in terms of funding that they get for research. So I don't know why this is the case. Maybe if somebody can unmute and tell me, why do you think we are getting just less than 5% of the total global research funding that is available? Someone can just unmute. I think we say there's no right or wrong answer here. We just express our opinions. Anybody, so that I can also hear your voices. Why do you think Africa is just getting just less than 5%?
Hello.
Are we not submitted? Yes, please.
Yes, I want to try. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I feel maybe the African countries have given 5% because of lack of trust generally of us maybe utilizing the money very well and maybe using it for the right full kind of thing. I think that is why lack of trust. Thank you.
Where do you think this is coming from? This from experience that the donors have had with us, or is it a perception? Is it a reality? Just in your opinion. It does not have to be the correct one. Yes. What do you think?
But I think it is from experience. Maybe some people have not given back the accountability very well. The majority would be. And this now, it blocks the whole African countries, but might be a few who never gave the good accountability, and maybe, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, thank you. You remember when you were saying that if you embezzle funds and your university gets blacklisted, so other people are going to suffer in the process. Thank you for bringing that, because then you're saying maybe some African scholars did not do a diligent job, but then now there's a way they look at Africans. Yes, Moses.
Yes, Doctor. Good morning, everyone. I think in addition to what my sister there said, is a combination of factors that are behind this, and part of it is also the high level of bureaucracy when it comes to the way we get involved in getting this funding. You might find in our African context, there are so many institutions which want to get involved in some of this research funding, and then they also want kickbacks here and there. And then when it comes to accountability, as we said earlier, it becomes a challenge. And then even when it comes to the competency, you might find that many of our African researchers don't seem to be well trained to be able to see through the success of some of these projects from the beginning to the end. So maybe some of them stop halfway or they die midway. And that has, of course, affected us greatly.
Thank you. There's something you have introduced another layer to this. And I think this is why we need to have these honest conversations. Sometimes we want to lie. We are at par with our counterparts from Europe. There is a reality that I'll come back to that, but I want to give Benson also a chance to contribute. Yes, Benson.
Good morning, Nicholas. Now, there are two things I would speak to. Number one, weak infrastructure, research infrastructure.
There's an echo from your end. I don't know whether you are logged in on two devices.
Maybe just 2 pages. I don't know. One failed. Then let me see if I can. Sorry. I will key it on the chat box, please. Yeah.
Okay, but once you fix the audio thing, I would really want to also hear your voice. No problem. Just put it in the chat. Yes, Rose.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My feeling is that in addition to what has been said, this North America and Europe are the main contributors to the research funds. And in a way, they would like to have those funds spread in their countries so that their taxpayers do not lose much.
That's very true. That's very true. That's very true, because most of the funding that comes to Africa comes from these continents, comes from North America and Europe, and of course a little bit from Asia as well. So find that our taxpayers cannot be given money, and all this money goes to Africa. So we want part of this money to remain here, because then we also have our own problems to solve. So in addition to the other contributions that have been given, I think that is also a reality that most of the funding also comes from those places. So ordinarily, when proposals are sent, they will look at proposals from their continent more favorably than the way they look at what comes from parts of Africa. And it's true. But then also, the other thing is about the bureaucracy. I have seen cases where you work in a consortium, and the money is already sent to. I'll give one thing that will implicate me. I don't want to talk about administration and finance, but sometimes you find there was a project we worked, and each country had to fund their own. So it was just a consortium, but then each country had to fund their own research. But then some countries did not even give money. They committed, the proposal was accepted, but the researchers never received anything. So looking at that, and if you have researchers from Europe, because we had the consortium had even institutions from Europe, another one from America. They looked at it and they kept asking, how do you work in Africa? Your government committed that they were going to give you money to do research. So two objectives of this proposal are not going to be achieved because your government has refused to give you money. So they look at this thing and then they talk, they communicate and say, I don't think Africans are in this money. And you will see, and this most of you will agree, that most of these calls will come. And some of the conditions is that you must have a partner from. So let's say if it is the funder is from Denmark or from Germany, then one of the conditions is you must get a funder, or the lead institution must be from this specific country. So they're also just trying to protect their interest. Why is it that we are not? Why is it that we are like this? Why do you think we cannot do things in a transparent way that other people can also trust us? What do you think is happening? Anybody can. We say these are just our opinions. It's not like it has to be. That is what we think. Anybody? Why do you think it's difficult for us to do the right thing? Hello? Yes, Moses.
Yeah, thank you once again. I believe that the challenge we have with doing the right thing, especially within the African continent, is that we tend to be used to being comfortable with mediocrity or doing things reluctantly without taking them very seriously. That's one. Two, we do not have very serious infrastructure and institutional frameworks that can support us when it comes to research. And that's why most times when we even carry out or conduct research, our research ends up in the shelf, and even our recommendations or the right policy frameworks and all that, they are not considered or not taken seriously by the institutions that should be concerned, among others.
Thank you so much. I think part of what you talked about at the end is about this disconnect between research or between academia and industry. And the last 1 week, I was demonstrating. We had a national show, the show here happening in here. And one of the things that I took to the showground showcase was the NFT aquaponic system, which was the subject of my piece. I developed a prototype and took it to the showground just to show people, because then the theme of the show was climate smart agriculture for trade and all those things, right? But then I took it there. So for the 1 week, I was displaying, explaining to people how you can grow fish and vegetables using the same water and just circulating that water and the water diagnostic system. So after explaining all those things, most of the people who came were saying two things. One is that you do very good research at the university, but then we don't access these things. So we sometimes just see them and bring them here. And you do research so that you can publish and communicate to fellow researchers, but you don't talk to us, people in the industry. So that disconnect is there. And then the other thing is, apart from just the disconnect, where scholars and people in the industry are not sitting together, we bring solutions without involving these people. So then they don't adopt. They will say, even if it is our university plan, so they will say those are their things. Yeah. So, but where does funding come from? We need to think about this. I think we talked about it. But funding comes from government. So government and also public institutions sometimes go out calls where people, like in Kenya, Costa sometimes throws out always apply for this funding. What I wanted to say with this is that when you are writing a proposal, you must know what kind of donor you want. And you're working with a government funder. So is this call going to be funded by the government? If it is going to be funded by the government, then make sure you align to what the government is trying to. Otherwise, they will look at it and say, this is not a priority, or this is not in line with the vision of the current administration. So if it is your local government, it will be your local government or a foreign government. But there is the political part of the proposal you're writing. I'm not saying that directly so, but look at what the priority of that government is. In Kenya, for example, our priority right now is the bottom up things. So it's just about technologies that can lift the smallholder farmers from the grassroots and help them enhance food security, income, and all these things. When you're writing, make sure you adopt a bit of that political tone, so to speak. I don't have the right word, but that is, so that the government, whoever is going to read, say this is with the government agenda. Okay. Then we have international agencies. So these international agencies are bilateral development partners. So they could be, other agencies from. There are several of them. I'm not going to mention all of them. The only thing I wanted to say here is make sure you read through the vision and the mission of the donor, of the funder you're sending a proposal to, so that you speak their language. There is the donor language. And I think it comes with the time. Scholars after doing your PhD, you want to now move into organization. But then you read we read through your proposals and realize you are still speaking the scholarly language. Okay, you're still speaking the scholarly language. You are still putting a lot of jargon in the document. Stuff like this. Of course, there are some cases where but if you make it too complex, because some of these reviewers, some of them, especially like let's say the government ones, sometimes they're not even reviewed by professionals from that specific field of people with that advice. Okay? They read through your executive summary and they already know, because the executive summary is a bit more simple. They already know how much you are asking for, how you are going to implement this project, and the project. Sometimes that is what they read. Then they say, okay, please, a nice concept. Let's proceed to full proposal development. So know the person you are dealing with. So if you are dealing, let's say, with a research institution, so a research institution has sent out a call, and you know that they are now going to, this one, the focus is research, innovation, and maybe knowledge generation. Make sure that your proposal speaks to what they are passionate about. If you are writing for government and you are writing very technical things, people don't understand what you're saying. So there are foundations like the Gates Foundation, for example, that also funds research industry. Sometimes you find companies investing in research and education. But I want someone to tell us sometimes what happens when industry starts funding research. What is the advantage of that? And what challenges would we face when industry now gets into funding research? I'm not saying they don't. There are a lot of industries, of private industries, private companies that fund research. What is the advantage of that? And what challenges can come in when industry now gets into actual and active funding research? Anybody can unmute. We are already 140 people, so anybody can unmute and just give us your opinion. When the industry now decides to fund research, what is the good thing about that? And the challenges that can come in. Anybody? I don't want to call people's names. We just have to talk about this because we have experience, and that's why I say most of the time I don't train. I'm just here to facilitate the discussion, but then we must have an house like that discussion. So what is the challenge of industry funding research? Or what is the advantage of industry funding research? And what challenges can we make when we now start seeing many more industries getting into research funding? Hey, any lady to just give you an idea about this? I know there are researchers here. There are researchers who have won grants. I know some of you are even funding studies right now. But what is the challenge when industry now gets into research? A good thing because they have the money, but what is the advantage and the disadvantage of that? Just an opinion.
May I give a try?
Yes, please, Ross.
Yeah. One advantage is that the possibility of implementing the outcomes of the research gets higher because the funding industry will most likely fund those activities they are involved in. And then the disadvantage is that the industry may restrict researchers in their work. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you brought it out so well, because that is not the challenge. The good thing is, fine, we tell you what we want, You do research for us, and then you answer those questions. Okay. We develop a material, let's say nano plus nano, whatever the way you call it. I'm not for it. But anyway, we develop a material, you test it for us, you collect data and feed us with that data to help us improve our material or help us improve our workflows or help us improve whatever product we're developing. Good thing. But there is a possibility of them now also compromising on this, as you say, restricted researchers, telling them that just did you get? So we meet behind the tent and ask, you tested our material. Is it good for human consumption? Then we say our research detected a lot of E. coli or high loads of fecal contamination in the product we are pushing to the market. So we are afraid that you need to do A, B, C, D to make it ready for them. But then they will tell you, we already have 100 tons in our warehouse. Where do you want us to take that one? So don't report this one as it is. You need to modify. You need to modify this. I hope you understand what I mean. So this is now the challenge you're going to have, where because then we say there's a saying in my village. I don't know where I'm village. I don't know whether it is village or it's just a saying that he who pays the piper calls the tune. We gave you the money to do the research. We will determine. We will dictate what you report. Yeah. So, any other challenge that you think comes with the industry on the research? What's the good thing about it? If maybe there's something that she left out. As I say, here we are just having a discussion because these are the same discussions you are going to have in the universities, and I know you will have these discussions. Yes, Benson.
Hello. Okay.
Yes.
Let's start with Benson first. Yes,
Nicholas, I think there were two windows open. That's why I could not speak the other time. It was so noisy. One of the things is control of the research data or ownership of intellectual property that may arise from that. A lot of controversy. Who discovered and who uses the control over that intellectual property.
That's
yeah.
true.
Fight between the institution, the author's institution, the person who authored it, and the person who funded it.
Yeah. So let's say an industry or a company has funded research, and then an innovation comes out of that research. So there's patent here that needs to be, there's an innovation that needs to be patented. They will start saying, no, but we gave you them. Without our money, you could not have discovered that. You could not have come up with that innovation. But then we'll say, no, but we are the ones who went out there, used our minds and our brain to create this. So we need to. So these are the things. Now, we have to be alive to this. We are bringing them out so that as you write proposals, you start thinking through that. You start, you bring this to the attention of your, then you say, like when they say, okay, we have very good money that is coming from this private institution, you say, yeah, it's okay. But then how will the data, who will own this? So that at the time of writing all these MOUs, this agreement, you make sure that it's part of, so that you don't start, fighting at the end with the one who funded you. They will say you are very ungrateful. We gave you money. Now you want to play around with it. So these are things we must start thinking through because they are it is what is happening. Now, the other thing before I forget is that Africa is also contributing very little to the global scientific output. So when you look at the publications coming out of Africa, it's not as much as what's coming from other places. Part of it is, of course, because of the funding that we get, so we don't get as much funding as the other parts of Africa. But you also know that when you're submitting a proposal as a researcher, the lead or the PI, they really are keen on his CV. Now, if the CV only has one paper or the CV only has two papers, then you see now the chances of that being funded becomes a challenge. So they are looking at you through the CV of the PI. Now, how do we fund? Because you need funding to publish, but then you also need to publish to be funded. Understand? So these are the catch-22 situations that we find ourselves. Now, NGOs also fund research. Now, what is the challenge with NGOs funding research? The good thing is that NGOs have grassroots built. So sometimes you find, because then NGOs are also focused on specific things. But now, NGOs is about advocacy and sometimes also about not activation. There's a way it's called activism. Now, what is the challenge of NGOs funding this session? The good thing of saying is they have grassroots, so they will tell you that if you want this to work, we are going to mobilize for you, and then we are just going to give you money so that you can, because we already understand what you do. But what is the challenge of that? It's almost the same as industry, because these NGOs have their own individual interests. So sometimes they will drag you into their interests that might not be either ethically in your research, or is not of your interest. Yeah, then we have the private philanthropy, so individuals and families funding such causes. This happens in some cases where you have someone just has money and say, I can fund something. Maybe as an example, I was watching TikTok where somebody donated a lot of money for cancer research just because his daughter died of a specific type of cancer. And he really wanted to understand, I have the money. The only person I was saving all this money for is already dead. So why can't I just give money, or this family can just give out to do research on this specific part of specific aspect of cancer? And they got a breakthrough. And now he's happy. He was saying, I'm happy that it is my daughter's death that resulted into this breakthrough. If my daughter had been alive today, many people would be dying, because then I could not have given money out. Then there's corporate CSR, so I've seen historical foundation here and there, and also crowdfunding, where public contribution to some type projects. This is not really common, but it can be parts. So examples, the government, of course, other government institutions, international, also private ones, including Bill and Gates Foundation. I have seen that happen funding research. Now, what are the success determinants? How do you, what makes people succeed in resource mobilization? We will keep revisiting some of these things, because I want them to, so that before you even start writing, there are things you already have thought about. Okay. Now, we start with building trust. So we need to build from the base. Okay. So again, remember the strategy. You don't start from writing the proposal, because at the time you're writing the proposal, you should have built a lot of things, but the proposal is almost there, towards the end. Then you write and submit, and then you go to the end of the other side now of implementation, management, that. At the beginning, start by building trust. So this trust is built over time through consistency, reliability, and delivering on promises. You remember, one of the things we said, one of the reasons why we think Africa in terms of grants is because of trust issues. So these people, sometimes when they want to give you money, they have to pair you with an institution from their country. They will tell you that, okay, if you want to apply, the only institution that is eligible to submit this proposal is an institution that is based in this country. Yeah, that's fixed trust. Okay? So build trust. As I say, if you work as part of a consortium, make sure you do such a good work that your institution, or you remain memorable. People will say, there was this researcher we worked with from this specific institution. There's someone like I worked with, there's a project I was coordinating. It was a 3-year project. I worked with a specific researcher or a specific individual from an institution called Fora. There's no problem calling out their name, because they did a pretty good job. So I worked with someone, I'm not going to mention his name, but he worked with an institution called Fora. I know most of us know Fora. That is someone, even if we are going to work privately, just the two of us on a project, I would always reach out. Or if anybody mentions in the program that we want someone from Rufel, I will just mention his name, because we work so well. So you develop that for both individual and institutional credibility. And then there's strong networks and connections that open doors and create opportunities. So you need to have relationships and collaborations. Yeah. we have institutions and individuals we work with almost everyone. So almost every project the institution we work with, all these individuals work with. And it happens because we have built this trust and we have built relationships that when somebody sees a call, they just call you. Even as I've said something, have a look at it and then you can meet it, David. You see. So because you can't see every opportunity. Okay, others will see them before you, and they will bring it to your attention. If that relationship is there, yeah. Then there's credibility, which is proven track record, transparency. You don't want to be someone who puts data. If I work with you, or if I don't find you, and then they read through your reports and feel like, okay, I don't think this is something that is legit. They'll always say there's something about this report. There's just something. So make sure you have heard it. Okay? Then clear problem. A well-defined significant problem with a clear target population. Okay? So before you get to verify, start thinking is the problem. Okay? Because if the problem is not big enough, or if the problem is not significant enough, then it's not worth having. Maybe if we have other bigger problems or more convincing problems than we have, then evidence, data, research, and proven reliable have justified the need. Now, I will share with you a site where proposals are sent. You can review. There's no deadline. There's nothing. You just throw in concepts there. Anytime you come up with a reasonable concept, just throw it there. You will keep revising. Now, part of what they have different categories. There's scalability, there's piloting, there's outscaling, there's all those things. So you decide where your idea falls. If it is an idea that already had been piloted, now you just want to scale it up, you throw it to that way. But you know that you need data. So let's say you, like the example of biofuel that I was talking about. You tried it on half everything. That it is 90% that data is very important because then I will say this is the data that we have from our evidence, and now we want to escalate, so we have to now scale it and now reach out to more farmers for more data. Data also, and this evidence also helps you when you're justifying why you give the money. So when you're narrating the problem, you narrate the problem with data. So if you say 75% of farmers, of smallholder farmers, of smallholder farmers, not processed in their first year of investment report, where did this come from? And then if you don't mention such kind of data, it will be difficult for me to see it from. Okay? Then institutional capacity. Robust systems, skilled people, infrastructure, and policies that enable delivery. Sometimes this is what you cannot do at your personal level.
Increase your volume.
Hello?
Increase your volume.
Anybody? Okay, let me try. Let me see how then this goes. So I was saying the institutional building the institutional capacity, this does not have to rest on your shoulders as a single researcher from the institution. This is an institutional thing. So we have to work towards building the institutional capacity. And that's why when you bring in a project to the university or the research institution, part of it should also be mentorship, part of it should be training, part of it should be capacity building. Because in that, you are not only building, you're not just building this for others, you're also building it for yourself. So that in future, when you're applying for funding, you have a data analyst. And this data analyst was built through a different project. Or you have someone competent in GIS, or you have someone competent in digitizing data collection tools. You see? So these are things you do before you even get into the actual writing. Then there's strong partnerships. Now, this is strong strategic collaborations that bring complementary expertise, networks, and resources. So this is not really different from relationships. And then now the proposal writing, a compelling, relevant, and well-written proposal that address funder priorities and shows
clear impact. I think you have seen that here I'm talking about funder priorities, and I talked about it already, that you need to know the priorities of the person who is funding this research. You don't just want to address only your problems, okay? These people have things they also want to achieve. So see what it is that they want to achieve and help them achieve that through your proposal. If they feel that your proposal is not aligned with their priorities, then they will be like, okay, our priority right now is about maternal health, okay? Or let's say about infant mortality as an example. Now, if you are writing to us about something that is not in that area, you have a very good idea or a good proposal, but no, that's not a priority for now. So check through those things, okay? So success factors is strong publication record. I think I talked about this already, that you need to publish to increase your chances of being funded. But on the other hand, you also need funding so that you can be able to publish, because you need data. How are you going to collect data if you are not funded? So this is where you are told that you need experience to get a job, but you also need a job to get experience. I hope you understand what I mean. So make sure you publish. So when you publish, you have a strong CV, and when you submit, then people, the funders will look at this CV and say, I think this is somebody who is worth funding. Then there's previous grants, okay? Previous grants will help you, will also enhance your chances of being funded, because they will look at your track record. How, let's say EU is the one funding this research. So let's say you are writing to EU, a proposal, you're sending it to EU. If you have been funded by EU before, make sure you bring it out very clearly that we have run 2 EU-funded projects successfully, and give even evidence and some key results from that. So that previous grant will help you, enhance the chances of being funded. Okay. Then there's institutional support. Sometimes we get most donors or most funders will insist that you get letter of support from the institution. If that letter of support is either weak or lacking completely, then there's no chance of you being funded. Because if it is your institution that cannot recommend you, and that's what I was saying, you find a scholar gets money and then they end up doing other things with that money other than the project. And the institution already has blackmailed them or blacklisted them. So you go to the VC or you go to your director of research, and then he tells you, I cannot write for you letter of support. The last time we wrote you a letter of support, you ended up disgracing the university. So these are the things, okay? Stakeholder engagement, I've talked about that enough. I'm not talking about it again. Financial accountability. I think this is why I was saying that when you are constituting your team, make sure that this, sometimes you just have an in-house accountant or an in-house auditor within the institution, so that anytime they will, so that you bring them on board so that they understand the project from the beginning. And when you start spending money, they will advise you on how to spend on costs that are eligible. Otherwise, you might end up spending money where it is not allowed, and then you are told to refund. It becomes a problem. Then there is a clear theory of change. We'll talk about TOC. So theory of change is just how the activities are going to lead into change. So what am I putting in? What are the outputs and what are the outcomes? And how will I know that this has been achieved? The innovation is also, if you have an innovative idea, again, as I said, innovation does not have to be something complex. When people hear about innovations, they think about the difficult or those big things. No, sometimes it's just the small. Maybe if something was always done in a certain way and you brought a new way of doing it, that's an innovation. Or innovation can even be in terms of co-creation. Okay. And then there is the innovation and measurable outcomes, all these things. So you need to build from the base, strengthen each layer, win more, and create impact. So let us start from building trust, okay? Because without trust, however good your idea is to be thrown out, they will say, this researcher again, this one we cannot fund. This one embezzled our funds. And these donors talk. Don't think they're not connected, they talk. Maybe not all of them, but then they talk. So sometimes you are blacklisted on one platform, and then you go elsewhere, you find you are still blacklisted there. So make sure that these things are okay.
But what are the common reasons why grants fail or why grants get rejected? We are now about now to get into the writing, but I wanted us to get all this out of the equation. Okay? Poor fit with donor priorities. I've talked about this. If the project does not align with the funding organization's goals and focus, they'll just bring it back to you. They will tell you ours is about green financing. So if you are talking about something else, we are afraid we are not looking at that. Okay? Weak problem statement or weak statement of the problem. I think I have also talked about this. If your problem is not screaming enough, then it's difficult for me to, give you money. Okay? So the problem is unclear, not well defined, or not backed by evidence. This is why we are talking about data. So we need to quantify the problem. I always tell people, quantify wherever possible, quantify the problem. Give it a human face. Talk about 25% or 1,000 people, or, just quantify the problem. Okay. And that data has to have a basis. You are not just going to throw in data here and there trying to support something that does not exist. Okay. If there is no innovation, the proposal offers nothing else, nothing new or different from existing solutions. So if you are just still, let's say we are doing liner pots as an example, and you are writing a proposal that you want to do something on liner pots, unless there's something innovative or something interesting. Otherwise, this is so normal or so superficial that people will just say, there's nothing interesting in this thing. Okay, so I think these are the things that then there's weak methodology. The approach is unclear, unrealistic, or unlikely to achieve results. So the approach here also goes to the approach also goes to what extent are you going to engage the community, and especially if it's a project that is working with the communities. Okay, that approach has to be there, the community participation. Or let's say if you are doing research where you are going to collect data, you are going to analyze the samples, you are going to do all these things, and if it is not clear what data sets you want to collect, how you will collect them, how will you handle that data, and then the output that will come out of it, then it's difficult. Okay, so these are things you need to watch out for. Then there's poor budgeting. The budget is unrealistic, unclear, inflated, or not just well justified. So you say that you want $1 million to do your research. But then I ask you to justify, why do you need 1 million? And then you start telling me that you need a car that is $100,000. It will be like, this is so unrealistic. Or you can't justify to me why you need that. So yeah, these are things I'm just bringing them to attention so that before we start the actual writing, we know what these things are. Then no sustainability plan. The project lacks a plan for long-term impact and continuation. This is one thing that you will have to deal with every time you are writing a grant proposal. Sustainability. And these days, they come in pairs. So sustainability and scalability. So adoption and scalability. Are there people? How will people adopt? What will enhance adoption and sustainability beyond the funding? Once the funding ends, how will this move forward? Are you going to develop business ideas out of it so that they can now keep moving? Are you going to get alternative sources of funding? What is it that you are going to do? Then the other problem sometimes is weak partnerships. Missing key partners or weak collaboration reduces credibility and research and reach. So if you're working and the consortium only has, I give an example. So if the consortium only has researchers from one university or one discipline or one subject area, then they will be like, but this is, there's no way this is going to be done. Okay. Then little stakeholder engagement. I talked about stakeholder engagement. If you have not engaged them, there is a call we are reporting, we are responding to. And one of the requirements is that you must demonstrate to us that even the proposal you are sending to us was co-created with community members. So to them, they just don't want you to write it at the end. That is how we are going to engage the community members during implementation. No, they want you to tell them how you are starting it from scratch. Okay. Then there's some ambitious objectives, so unrealistic goals that are too broad or not achievable within the time frame. So if you want to do, if you write objectives that cannot be achieved, if there's a feeling that that's an objective that cannot be achieved within the time that has been allocated, then then there's also the minor ones like poor English or grammar, spelling, and all those things. And then sometimes when you don't have preliminary data, lack of baseline data or evidence makes it hard to prove need and feasibility. So still boils back to the problem. So if you don't have an idea of what you are talking about or how big the problem is, if you cannot quantify it, then there's a problem. Okay. Now, understanding these pitfalls helps you attract stronger, craft stronger, more competitive proposals. Okay. Now, the other thing, I just want us to, if anybody can give another, example of why proposals fail. Maybe if anybody just wants to contribute any other reason apart from the ones that I have already mentioned before, because then I want us to look at one thing and then we take a break and then we come now back to the actual writing. Does anybody have any other thing that you think is left out? If not, then I will go here and then I give a few minutes for just plenary. Okay. What are the key take-home messages from here? Resource mobilization is broader than fundraising. I think we talked about that. So these days, anybody, anyway, any place you talk about resource mobilization, know that it is beyond just fundraising. It involves any other thing, any resource. So if you are writing, requesting for equipment, requesting for researchers, requesting for collaborations, requesting for whatever kind of support, you are mobilizing resources. Okay. Grant writing is only one component of a successful funding strategy. Successful researchers cultivate relationships long before calls are announced. Remember that. Institutional credibility, partnerships, and research impact are as important as scientific excellence. Strategic planning, donor alignment, and evidence-based proposals significantly improve funding success. Okay. So you can always, because then this will be shared. So you can read, you can go through and read some of this, this on the end. I think one that I like, I've read quite a bit of is Handbook for Research Institutions. So it's quite a good, this is a good one. You would want to check through it. Does anybody have anything that they want to add as we prepare now to get into the different parts of the proposal? Anybody? We will discuss and then take a short break and then we come back. So here I will now stop sharing and then I will allow us to just have like a plenary for a few minutes before we get to now start writing. Hello? Anybody wants to unmute and say something before we go for a break? It does not have to be a question. It could be a comment, because then we are now coming back now to see how then we craft every section of the proposal. Yes, Moses.
Yes, Doctor. Good afternoon again. Good morning once again. And I'm actually interested in inquiring something that we were able to go through during one of our seminar series concerning the politics of knowledge. And of course, basing also on the interests sometimes of these funders who may be making up a call for, let's say, resource mobilization or funding or financing of projects. It is clear that most times, as you also mentioned it, these funders have their specific interests. And if we do not, for example, customize our research proposals to speak to these interests, at times we might also get rejections. But then the question is, if we do that, we try to align with what they need, at times we may end up losing what exactly we want to do as researchers. We get to lose that, we get differentiated because we are doing something in someone's interest that may not even be relevant to what we're interested in as researchers. That's one. Then two, even when we publish, let's assume we've done the project and completed, and then we publish our work. There are situations where we find ourselves that because we are not publishing in an area that is being considered as, let's say, as the main knowledge areas, let's say, in these fields, we end up getting ourselves at the periphery. We have quite an examples of them within East Africa who could not get their work published or even being visible because they were not, let's say, speaking to the powers that be, or their work was not considered to be correct politically, if you know what I mean. So how do we navigate all these kind of challenges and obstacles? Thank you.
I will answer, and again, as I say, whatever I'm saying is my opinion, and these are very personal opinions. They are not in any way the opinions of TCC Africa, but I'm just giving from my experience as a researcher. In fact, it's true that some of these donors have their own interests, and they wanted to speak to their interests. And as I said, there's a saying in my village is the entire world, that he who pays the piper calls the tune. So they tell you that we are giving you money, but then this is how you are going to spend that money. Or you are only going to spend that money on this. Otherwise, if you don't want, then you just leave it. So that's a very delicate balance. And for researchers, it's up to you now to see. I don't think there is one silver bullet that can help you solve this problem. So that's why we always say, try now, just navigate around and see if it is one that you cannot, if you do not like, or if it is one that you cannot, if their priorities is something that doesn't align with whatever you want or your goals or objectives, then you just don't get into issues with them. Now, the problem again is sometimes you don't see the clear intention until the money comes. Now you have the money here, and now you are told that this is what you have to do, but I wanted to do this other one. And you are told, no, you cannot do that one because we are the ones who have given you the money. So you just have to do this one. So as a researcher, sometimes now you are in a very tight place because you don't know what to do in this case. So this is where you now have to go beyond just your individual consortium. You can discuss within the consortium. If there's no agreement, then you now escalate it now to the university and go to the VC or the director of research and tell them, I got this money, okay? I left this, I got this funding, but the priorities or now the donor is now forcing me into doing this and that, and I don't think it is in line with the priorities of the university or my own, even morals. So I am afraid I will have to drop this. So it is the university that now will help you communicate with them. If for some reason you feel you are being twisted and you think you're not going to get through, you now have to go to the university. And that's why you also have to be in good books with the university. About publishing, most of the work is published out there. Most of our work, we have African journals online. So AJOL is where we have so many journals that are publishing within the African continent. But some of our journals are also considered by those outsiders, for lack of a better word, as not being strong enough in terms of quality. So sometimes you publish your work there, and then they trash it. They say, they call them local journals, but they also have their own local journals that they think are very strong. So these are challenges that need concerted effort from the African scholars. It's not like one person can do this, but we have to have conversations like these ones. Benson, I want you to have your last say because we are going to have a little break.
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted to comment or even seek your view on two issues. One, while crafting a successful or a strong proposal, you have said these are the issues that we need to pay attention to, and many of us are researchers that have had experience one way or the other at different level. There is that hidden aspect of the cost of developing a successful proposal. How do we navigate those costs that sometimes are a drawback to researchers? And then the second one is on the issue of stakeholders. Of course, some stakeholders would be the local communities that you eventually would want to engage or to involve or to study or to collaborate with at the field level. And there is always this bit that anytime you come up and you show up as a potential researcher, they imagine that you have come with donor funding and they start asking you how to get involved in their problems, especially when you are still preparing the ground for potential collaborations. How would researchers handle these two issues? Thank you.
The first one, the drawback was not very clear for me. You're saying, how do we navigate calls that we think are drawbacks? Maybe if you can give maybe a clear understanding so that I get a clear understanding of this.
No, I'm talking about the costs. The costs of developing a proposal. Like if you are developing a proposal over a space of, say, several months, there are some costs that are involved. That can be a setback. Let me take a setback to the researcher saying, oh, this one is a little bit costly. Probably I have, maybe, for example, I have a vision of studying something about, say, for example, marine pollution and something like that. My institution somewhere is based, say somewhere in the interior 400-500 kilometers away. I want to go to the probably as part of developing. There are costs involved of probably going to the physically to the field and getting. So those costs of developing a proper proposal. That's what I'm asking. If they are actually there are actual setbacks for many people, or they started and say no. If I have to actually have some tangible evidence that this is a real issue, I have to probably go to the field reconnaissance and all those kind of things. That's what I'm talking about.
It's a challenge, and sometimes even at university level, we've seen where my mentor keeps going to the VC and asking, we are meeting, when we meet, sometimes we develop proposals, like there's an EU proposal we were developing, and we were meeting twice a week for 1 month. So you have to bring people, let them sit down, and they have other things they are doing. So you need to, sometimes you ask the universities to chip in, maybe just pay lunch or maybe buy lunch for these people, provide breakfast or something, because sometimes you sit down for a whole day trying to conceptualize these ideas. Now, it's true that can be a very big challenge, because then you need that evidence, not even just the meetings alone, but sometimes, as you are saying, there's some kind of concepts you are developing, but you want to go out there and even maybe speak to people so that you can record their experiences, and then so that this can strengthen your bid. So this is a drawback, and that's why one of the reasons why you find that in that case, then an African researcher would say, I don't have the money to do all these things. But it also depends on the policies of the university. There are universities where you can walk into the research office and tell them, this is exactly what I want to do. There's very high prospects or potential with this call. I want to go to a specific place for 3 days or 4 days to do this reconnaissance study so that I have some data that I can put into strengthen my concept. The university will give you, or the research institution will give you, but it depends on what institution you are working with. So these are challenges that African researchers are facing, and it is true that sometimes they are drawbacks. Now, the other thing about that, when people see you and like they're just starting out, and when people see you and you want to collaborate with them, they already see that you come with the research money, and some of them will not commit, because then some people just want what is ready to be eaten. They don't want to go to the garden, cultivate, harvest, cook, do all those things. So they just want you to come, and when you approach them or you write them an email saying, I want us to work together, they'll be like, on what project? Then we tell them, no, I want us to form a consortium so that we can there's a call here, we can give it a shot. And then they just don't feel like, we thought you had come with money, and we don't have time for that. So that is why you need to start developing these friendships and partnerships early enough, so that you don't do it at the time when you are now rushing to answer to a call. Now, the other thing is, you could have very good partners, but then sometimes you reach out to them, either they're too busy or they're too engaged, or they're not interested in that kind of call, or there's a specific kind of expertise you need, and you don't have it within the networks you have created. So you run around at the last minute trying to reach out, and then when you don't have a way of convincing them that this is something that is 100% sure, and it's worth your time. So these are challenges that we have to navigate as researchers. So I don't think there is I will get a very strong answer, but sometimes it's just about negotiating with the institution and talking to them about why that is important. I would want us to have just a break of maybe Kevina can take us on a break
then we can come back maybe for another 1 hour, 30 minutes, and then we can stop it. So, Kevina, take us on a break and tell us when we are coming back. Just a short one.
Thank you so much, Dr. So we're going to have a 10-minute break. I think that's enough time for you to stretch or grab a cup of water or coffee. And in the meantime, I'm going to share our attendance list in the chat box for day one. Kindly make sure to take a moment to complete it. This attendance form is going to be required to track attendance for certificate issuance. So there's that, and also the recordings for this session are going to be shared through your email. So if you missed the first session, don't worry about that. So see you at 11:10. Thank you. Okay, just give me a minute to fix it.
Interesting. There were quite some interesting insights as we were living. And as I said, we sometimes, like in my case, I am also just starting out. I have been part of several projects. Most of them I was just participating in the implementation. It's now, I think in the last 2-3 years that I now started participating very actively in writing proposals for grants and stuff like this. And I think one thing that is true is now navigating the challenges that come. One, with aligning to the call to the funders' priorities, and if those priorities don't match yours, this is what happens sometimes even with students. When you are a PhD or a master student and you are funded by a project, and you are told, let's say you had your proposal, and you are told that your proposal must answer the research questions of the project that is funding you. Now you don't have money. Maybe you are done with your coursework, or the project says we are going to pay your stipend and we are also going to pay your school fees. But then you have to write a proposal, or you have to do research that answer to the research questions of this project. So regardless of what you want to write, that's your problem. Whatever research you want to do, that is your problem. If we are going to give you money, if you are going to support your research, you must answer to the objectives of this, our project. So it's something that I have seen students now dropping their ideas entirely, conforming to the ideas of the project. So it is not an easy thing to navigate, and it's also happening not only in the proposal world, but also when it comes to academia. Actually, there's a time someone got some results. He was looking at the impact or the influence of if there's any correlation between the gold mining around Lake Victoria and accumulation of heavy metals in fish flesh. When the results were out, he had seen that there is considerable amount of heavy metals from fish flesh from a specific location, and I think that did not sit well with some people from that place, and including even politicians. So that friend of mine is now doing his postdoc in South Africa, but then there is part of that work that he was just told not to publish as it is. So, these are the challenges. Okay, so
I think I will take just a general overview of what the proposal writing process looks like. The good thing is, and that's why my work is not going to be very difficult, most calls these days come with templates. So you have a template. I will show you an example of a template. So you have templates, and yours is just to fill into those different sections. There were years when we would write 50 pages of a proposal. These days, you find a full proposal is 12 pages or 15 pages. Full proposal, including budget, work plan, everything, 15 pages. There's one we are doing right now. The concept was only 3 pages. Now, the full proposal is 15 pages strictly. So these days, it's not very difficult because then you have a template, and even in that template, in that box, they even describe what they want in that space. Okay. So the proposal basically is idea generation. So you have an idea. I want to write a proposal. And this idea generation now comes from the call itself. So you've seen a call, you generate an idea around that call or around that theme. So, and then needs assessment. So we will go ahead and assess. Okay, I have seen that this call is about climate smart aquaculture systems or about post-harvest reduction or post-harvest loss reduction. Okay. So then you do needs assessment. So who needs this post-harvest reduction, or what is the problem that is there? Then you do literature review. So this literature review, as I said, is where you are going to get facts that will help you support the problem or will help you give a very nice background so that we get to understand how did we get to this problem, or how did we get here, okay? Then there's problem identification, so you identify that specific problem that you want to solve. Then you talk about the objectives and strategy, because then the objectives is the vehicle, or these are the specific vehicles that are going to drive you towards achieving the goal. On the strategy of the approach, then we talk about the methodology and activities, then the budget, and submission, and there could be other things in between depending on the call or on the funder. So different funders would have different requirements when they are when people are applying for funding. Okay, so follow each step carefully, ensure alignment across sections, and keep the funders' guidelines in mind throughout the process. So if the guide is about the number of words for each section, keep to those number of words. If they want to, for example, to justify the budgets, make sure you justify those budgets. If, for example, there's a concept, there's a proposal we were writing last month, and I will not mention the funder, but what they were doing is they are not going to audit. They give you the money. There will be nothing like auditing once you do them. You're not even going to do financial reporting. That's what they were saying. What they do is they are auditing you before they give you the money. So they will tell you, prepare a budget. And in that budget, every single budget item must be supported by a pro forma invoice. Okay, so you tell us that we will be doing an activity, like maybe stakeholder engagement, or we will be doing data collection. How much per day? Where does the rate come from? Where's the evidence that is the money that you need for that kind of activity? So, different donors will have, or funders will have different requirements. So stick to that, okay? So the proposal has several things. So the first thing is, of course, the cover page. Again, I know most of us have had experiences with this, so this section is more important than we all imagine. It should be interesting, precise, descriptive, so that the reviewers would know what to expect. So from the cover page alone, I should be able to have an idea. I might not even know what is in the proposal in details, but I know what the title is. I know the names of the applicants. I know the institution. I know the funding agency, sometimes at the bottom. And sometimes it's already embedded into the, so you don't need to write anything. Sometimes the date and contact information, most of the time an email address, and mostly the email address of the PI, okay? It should be clear, simple, and in understandable English. No jargons, no overstatements. So the cover page should be very simple and clear. And sometimes you can even make it visually appealing. So you can, use some graphics to make it visually appealing, but it also depends again on the caller, on the funder. Okay, the project title should be a brief statement of what is to be implemented, studied, or researched. So check out and evaluate other titles for projects that have been funded before. So you don't want to write the title on the right, where we are a study on some aspects of drying and quality of walnuts. If I read through that as your title, then I will see that you are not serious. Okay, maybe you will be serious, but But if you write something like improving post-harvest quality and shelf life of Nigerian walnuts through optimized drying technology, then now I have even all the variables that I need to know. Okay, so try as much as you can, and then also sometimes you are told to give an acronym for your title. Okay, so that the name of the project, like maybe an acronym. So you have a long title, and then you give an acronym. I've seen several projects having acronyms. Okay, so that people you don't have to talk about. You don't have to. If you are now running the project, you have an acronym that makes it very easy for you to just call it using that acronym. Most donors will always encourage you to have an acronym for the title of your project, so that you don't have to read the entire long, lengthy title. Okay. Now remember, a good cover page creates the first impression and sets the tone for the entire proposal. So the cover page must have enough information. Okay. Then after the cover page, most of the time we have the executive summary. So I'm just giving you an executive summary at a glance. I will also share with you, one of the proposals we have worked on, maybe just in passing, not maybe into too much detail, but just in passing, so that you see all these sections. So a well-crafted executive summary answers the most important questions reviewers ask about your proposal. Okay, it should be complete yet concise. Look at it as the abstract of your paper. So you're publishing a paper. So it should cover all elements without unnecessary details or jargon. Okay, so when I read your executive summary, I need to know a little bit of a background of the problem, the actual problem you are solving, the method you are proposing, how you will do this, the impact that will come out of this. Okay, so I want to see what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you will do it, where you will do it, who will be involved, and so what. So the so what is the impact of the outcome. So at the end of the day, I want to know, as a funder or as somebody reviewing for the funder, I want to know from your executive summary what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you will do it, where you will do it, who will be involved, and so what. Okay, so it must be complete yet concise, clear, and self-contained. So self-contained means that it should stand alone, so non-experts can easily understand your proposal. So this is not the place to introduce a lot of jargon in the executive summary. Okay, so it should be focused and relevant. So highlight what matters most, why it matters, and what you will achieve. So the executive summary, as I will share an example, must be that focused. Okay, and it has also to be impact oriented. You remember I said after answering all those things, so what? Okay, so what? And it has to be brief, typically half to 1 page or everyone. So sometimes it goes back to the requirement of the funder. So sometimes the funder will tell you that the executive summary has to be 300 words, or it has to be 250 words, or 350 words. So stick to that. Okay. So think of it as your elevator pitch on a paper. Okay. So if somebody asks you, then can you talk about you want me to give you money? Okay. Tell me why you want me to give you money. And you have a very short time to tell them that. Okay. So I think these are things that you have to bear in mind when you are writing your executive summary. Okay. So the key elements to include, I think I've talked about, is a little bit of a background that is not captured there, but a little bit of a background so that we get to understand where we got to where we are. So it can be, a short, maybe 2-3 lines of a background. Then the problem, what issue are you addressing and why is it important? The objectives, what do you aim to achieve? The approach, the how. And then the so what is the expected outcomes.
okay? And then the total budget. So at the end of it, you need to tell us to implement this ABCD, we are asking for, or the total budget for this, estimated budget for this project is 1 million shillings, okay? If it is weak, they may not read more. So make it strong, okay? So in one glance, the executive summary tells the reviewers what you want to do, why it matters, how you will do it, what will change, and how much it will cost. So make sure that this is all involved in your executive summary, okay? Then after the executive summary, mostly you will be asked about the organizational background because we want to understand the organization. And sometimes they only want you to describe the lead organization. Sometimes they want you to give a brief introduction of each institution if they are partners, okay? So if you are partnering, let's say it's a consortium, then sometimes they will say they want to get a little bit of a background of each institution so that they understand how that institution fits into the consortium. So sometimes they want you to do organizational background, or they want you to, because then the team composition will be described mostly towards the end, and sometimes it's even an appendix. But you want to say the lead institution is, let's say, Maseno University. This is the history of Maseno. Maybe not a lot of details, but a very short description of, so that we understand why that institution fits to be the lead institution. Okay, so then why it matters. So a strong organizational background builds confidence in your ability to deliver results and effectively manage project resources. Okay, so you want to give them this background so that they understand whether the lead institution has the capacity in terms of resources, in terms of expertise, in terms of even financial to manage the proposal, the project. You don't want to be asking for $1 million US, and that $1 million US you are not able to. You are not able to. The institution does not have the capacity to manage it, or the institution does not even have the expertise to manage that kind of proposal, and that's why that kind of project, and that's why it is important to describe the institutional background. It depends on where the donor wants it. So sometimes donors will want you to put it at the end, where you are also describing the expertise, the different expertise, or the different researchers that you're working with. Some of them will want you to bring them at the beginning. So, because this is where you are also going to talk about past accomplishments, okay? Key accomplishments and milestones demonstrating track record. So you would say, Maseno University, or the department of this within Maseno University has successfully implemented an EU-funded project of this budget, or was talking about this was the success, and all those things, okay? And this is also where we talk about the partnerships and networks, if we have them, so that we can leverage, if we have partnerships with government institutions and all this, okay? Then we go to the situation analysis. Now, this is not what you are going to write, okay? But you have to analyze the situation, and that's why we're talking about literature, because this is going to help you write a convincing statement of the problem. Because we said if the problem is not screaming enough, then it's very difficult for you to convince a donor that your work is worth funding. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that you have to analyze the situation so that you get to understand what is happening. Because it's only in that way that you can be able to convince us that I have a problem. You cannot have a solution to a problem you don't understand. Okay, so this is where we have for situational analysis. We have different methods, but one of it is the statement, is the problem tree that can also be used. So a clear understanding of the current situation and the scope of the problem provides the foundation for a relevant and impactful intervention. So that's why it is important for you to do this situational analysis. So we start with the current situation, okay? Describe the existing conditions related to the issue and what is happening right now. So let's say if we are talking about infant mortality from a specific disease. So let's say from malaria or infant mortality from, let's say from malaria. So we could talk about what is happening currently. How many children are affected by this? What are the reasons behind this? And you see on the right, I'm now giving examples where you will give evidence. So like in this case, when we are talking about youth unemployment, so you have the evidence from the different places so that when you are narrating this as a problem, you can quantify the problem, okay? Then existing evidence, so present data, research findings, and reports that highlight the issue. I think this is part of what I've been talking about, okay? Stakeholders affected, geographic scope, magnitude of the problem. So these are things you analyze first through your reference, your literature review and literature search and stuff like this, because then this is going to help you write a very strong statement of the problem. Otherwise, you cannot write a strong statement of the problem if you have not read about the problem, if you have not analyzed the problem well enough, okay? So this analysis helps you have data that will now go into your writing, okay? Now, how youth unemployment contributes to poverty, social instability, and underutilization of our geographic dividend. So demographic dividend. Now, this is because of the data that has been presented up there. So when you're writing a problem or your problem with statement, it's good to have some data. Now, this data comes from situation analysis, okay? Then we get to the statement of the problem. So some people call it, problem statement, but I think I like calling it statement of the problem because you are stating the problem, okay? So this statement clearly defines the issue you want to address and provides a compelling case for why your project is needed, okay? So this is where you are going to tell us what is the problem. Clearly describe the problem in specific terms, be precise and avoid vague and broad statements. Who is affected? Why is it important? What evidence exists? And what knowledge gaps remains? When you write this, if I see all these elements in your statement of the problem, then I understand that this person has really understood the problem, okay? What is the problem? High rate of high rates of youth unemployment as an example. Who is affected? Mostly the youth between the age of this and that. Why is it important? It's important because then this high level of unemployment leads to crime and so many other things. Where is the evidence? The evidence data from KNBS, for example, 2026, suggests that 75% of the youth, 1 million, those numbers. So what is it that remains that we still don't understand? Now, one, in terms of knowledge and also in terms of interventions. So we would say this and this and this have been done, but we feel that if we introduce this kind of aquaculture, or if we introduce this kind of whatever, then this is going to absorb this number of people. See, now you have quantified the problem and you've even told us where the gap is, okay? Now, avoid proposing solutions too early. Focus on clearly presenting and justifying the problem before suggesting what should be done, okay? A well-defined problem is half the solution. Funders want evidence that the problem truly exists and matters. So that's why I was saying data, always, because that is what is going to quantify your problem and make it relevant and also prove that it truly exists. You don't want to be talking about abstract problems that donors will look at and say, I don't think this is a problem, okay? So example here is youth unemployment in urban areas of Kenya remains high, affecting over 26% of the youth aged 35 to whatever. This leads to poverty, socially, I think I talked about this. So this data, you must state where it came from. So that is how you write the statement of the problem section of, it's just like the statement of the problem of any other problem, but then we have the problem tree analysis. I think it should have come before the writing. So it should have come immediately after situation analysis because this is part of situation analysis, okay? Why do we use problem tree? You can just analyze these problems and write them down by yourself. But the problem tree makes it very easy because it clarifies the relationship between cause and effect. You see now, like here, in the trunk of the tree, we have high youth unemployment in the trunk of the tree. But remember, in English, they talk about the root cause. So what is the root cause of this? So it's very easy for you now to link the root causes to the core problem and then to the effects. So these effects will help you justify why the funding is important. That if you give me money, I am going to implement A, B, C, D that will reduce wasted human potential, will reduce migration of youth, will also increase income or generate new income opportunities. So this problem tree, you will talk about this as the causes of this problem, and then you will use the consequences to help you craft your justification why it is important for you to give me the money. Okay, so the problem tree is important because it clarifies the relationship between cause and effects, helps you identify the root causes of the problem. It guides the development of relevant and targeted solutions, because then these targeted solutions are the ones that are going to solve these problems. Okay, improves the logical flow of your proposal and strengthens justification for the proposed interventions. I think I've talked about this already. So you draw it down, because then you could have this in your head and maybe it's jumbled up. But if you draw it on a piece of paper and then you put what is the main problem, then you put it in the middle of the tree. And then you look at what are the root causes of this. So what causes? So like here, we have roots and even subroots, and you can even go further. So one of the problem is high youth unemployment, but one of the root causes is limited access to quality education. What is causing limited access to quality education? It is poor career guidance. What is causing poor career guidance? You can keep asking yourself those questions. Then the next one is lack of relevant training skills. Why do they not have relevant training skills? It's weak linkages with industry. Why do we have weak linkages with industry? You can answer that as you go, and you keep asking yourself. Okay. Once you do that, it helps you, because then you would just say addressing the root causes leads to sustainable solutions and long-term impact. So you say how your problem is going to enhance access to education, to quality education, or how your problem, how your solution, how your project or your proposed project is going to talk about relevant training skills like capacity building or core training or dual training that these days we are talking about, where people go to the university and then during their time or during their coursework, they are also working with people within the industry, or how it is going to enhance access to finance. So if your proposal is going to enhance access to finance, then now you can tell us that is going to solve the problem. So the problem tree is one of those that helps you analyze your problem very well. So after the statement of the problem, then you have goals versus objectives. So the goals and objectives are not the same. Yeah, they would sound very close. They are closely related, but they are not the same thing. Okay, understanding the difference helps you design a focused project and measure success effectively. So the goal is the bigger picture. So it's the big picture, the ultimate change that the project aims to achieve. Okay, so the goal is broad. So it describes a general long-term result. So long-term result just focuses on the overall change or impact on beneficiaries, not always measurable directly. So it is achieved through a set of objectives. Okay, so like for example, if the goal of our project is to have improved livelihoods for youth in rural communities, then there's a way we will have so many objectives or different objectives and activities under those objectives that will help us achieve the entire goals. If somebody asks, what is the goal of this project? No, the goal of the project is just to enhance food security. But then how will you measure that food security? Then it means that there are small activities or specific objectives that you're going to have that will form the activities that will help you move towards achieving the overall goal. Okay. Now, objectives are specific measurable steps that lead to achieving the goal. Okay. So they are specific, which is clearly defined what needs to be achieved. They are measurable, they are time bound, and they are achievable. So that's what we are talking about, SMART objectives. Okay. Examples of objectives: to train 200 youth in agribusiness skills within 12 months. See, that is very specific. How many people, what are we doing? We are training. How many youth are we training? In what skills and in how many months? Okay. Objective 2, for example, is to support 100 youth to start income-generating enterprises within 18 months, or increase average monthly income of participating youth by 30% within 24 months. So make sure that they are specific, measurable, and time-bound. Reviewers always look at this, okay? Now, the goal is where you want to go. Objectives are the milestones that get you there, okay? So
I was looking at, I think there's a time I was watching something on TikTok and someone was explaining how the word milestone came to be. So long time ago, before the digital era, or before we started putting all these signages, people would drive and then they would not know how far they have gone or how far they still are before they get to their destination. So there would be stones engraved with distances. So you would know that I am covering 400, I'm told it is 400 kilometers, for example, but we still see them by the roadside, by the way. You find that you have now covered 15 kilometers, you still have 20 kilometers to go. So those are the milestones. So you will know that I'm moving towards my goal, but how am I going towards that goal? So you will get the objectives are the milestones that will help you know that, okay, the first objective is to do this, I've done it. Is it contributing, or am I moving towards my goal? Okay, so that you don't end up having objectives that will not answer or will not help you achieve the ultimate goal. So we talked about the SMART objectives. So SMART objectives are clear, focused, and achievable. They provide a strong roadmap for implementation and measurement of success. Okay. An example of a poor objective is improve fish farming. Why is it a problem? It is not specific. It does not state what will improve. Not measurable. There's no way to know how much improvement. Not time bound, no time frame for achievement, and it is too vague. So we don't know. You want to improve fish farming. That's too general. Okay. So an example of a better objective is to increase fish productivity among 300 farmers by 30% within 2 years. It is specific because it clearly states what will be improved, which is fish productivity. It is measurable because the improvement is quantified, 30%. It is achievable because realistic targets, we have set realistic targets. So you don't want to tell us that you want to reach out to 1 million farmers within 2 weeks. That will be unrealistic, okay? It is relevant because it addresses the core issue of low productivity, and it is time-bound because it's talking about 2 years. So every time, I will share this presentation will be shared as already said, so you can go back and anytime you are trying to develop the objectives, go back and try to see how specific they are, okay? So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That is why we call them SMART objectives, okay? Then after objectives, depending on the call, sometimes they will ask you for theory of change, or they will ask you for log framework or log frame and stuff like this. Okay, but let's talk about the theory of change because it is what is now trending. I'm seeing most of the calls we are responding to are talking about theory of change, and sometimes they talk about theory of change and now they leave out the log frame completely. But sometimes you find both of them. So a theory of change shows how and why your project is expected to bring about the desired change. It links your resources and actions to the long-term impact you want to achieve. You remember we had a goal? So the goal was to improve fish productivity or enhance whatever it is. So the theory of change is where you are going to tell the donor, this is the input, okay? So we are going to put money here. These are the activities we are going to do with this resource, and these are the outputs that we are going to get, okay? And then the output, the outcome, and then the impact. So as an example, so we will invest financial resources or human resources or equipment or partnerships or whatever. What will we do with the investment? We will do training and capacity building, community engagement, technology transfer, awareness creation, mentorship and support. What will be the output of those activities? The number of people trained, tools and materials developed, events and workshops held, or services delivered. What will be the outcome? So these are the short to medium term, because the outcomes are the short to medium term changes. Improved knowledge skills, increased adoption of good practices, improved productivity and behaviors, and strengthened systems. Now, the long term is now the impact. The impact is improved livelihoods, reduced poverty, environmental sustainability, inclusive and resilient communities. So the theory of change tracks this for you. So some funders will always insist on theory of change. You need to tell us the value for money. You need to tell us we are giving you this money. This is what you are going to do with that money. This is the outcome, the output of that, the results you are going to get out of that. Then the short and medium term changes and medium term changes and the ultimate impact. So you need to link all that.
So it means that the theory of change, you can now, depending on the activities you have and the input you will have each activity will be linked to its output and its outcome and the final impact. Okay, but then the theory of change must come with assumptions. Okay, the assumption is that the conditions need to hold true. Okay, so these assumptions are the conditions that need to hold true for our change pathway to succeed. Okay, so some of the assumptions is that stakeholders will remain engaged and supportive, adequate resources will be availed on time, and participants will apply the knowledge and skills gained. Okay, and there will be continued access to markets and services. Policies and external environment will remain conducive. No major shocks like drought, conflict, or floods or pandemic will negatively affect progress. Okay, because then you can have a very nice theory of change. But if any of these assumptions do not hold true, then you're not going to achieve it. So you are already working with communities. In the middle of your project, they bolt out or they get disenfranchised, and then they say, we don't want to be part of that project anymore. Are you going to achieve this? You're not going to achieve the outcomes. You're not even going to get any impact. So the assumption is that during the time of the project, all these assumptions will hold true. Okay? The theory of change makes your logic explicit and helps funders understand how your project creates real, lasting change. So you try to develop theory of change for any project you are working with. It's a very simple thing. How much are we putting? What activities are we doing this money? What outputs are we getting? What outcomes are we getting? What impacts are we getting? So some donors and most donors these days will ask you for the TOC. And then now we have the log frame. So they are not really, different, but the log frame has been there for some time. Okay. So a log frame is a summary table that presents your project's results change in a clear, logical, and measurable way. So what is the objective? What are the indicators, the means of verification, and assumption? Okay. So the objective, for example, is the impact. So the indicator, for example, so if the impact is % increase in household income among target communities, how will you verify that? Okay, and what assumptions do you have? Then another objective. So you have. I've just grouped them in broad sense. Okay, so you can put a specific objective here, an indicator of that, how to know that objective has been achieved, means of verification, and all that. Okay, but why do donors like log frames? It provides a clear, concise overview of the project, provides logical link between activities and results, make goals, indicators and risks explicit, then facilitates monitoring, evaluation, and accountability, and enables comparison between proposals. Okay. Then now the project strategy. The strategy is in several ways. Okay, so sometimes it is sometimes it's just the approach. Okay, so basically it's the approach, and depending on the kind of donor you are dealing with, some of them will insist that you must have community participation or community engagement, and so it has to be. Sometimes the approach could be co-creation. During scaling or upscaling or piloting, you must do co-creation. There's a project we were running where the approach was the use of living labs. So living labs are where experiments are done, but then farmers are allowed to come in and give their input, and that input is already incorporated into the experimental design. Okay, so a project strategy outlines the key approaches and actions you will use to achieve your objectives and create lasting impact. Strong strategies are evidence-informed, context-specific, and objective-driven. Okay, so one could be capacity building. So if you say the approach that we are going to adopt is capacity building, because we feel that this is where the gap is. So train farmers and extension agents, develop skills in farm management and business leadership, strengthen institutional and whatever. So tell us the approach. So if the approach is capacity building, just describe how that approach works. If the approach is infrastructure development, if you're going to construct, upgrade facilities, buy new equipment and stuff like that, tell us that is the main approach. But sometimes you find the approach combines, sometimes you find projects that combines 3 or 4 or even all of this. So this policy and advocacy and engagement, you would say, that our project is just focusing on policy and advocacy. We are not going to do anything else. So that is also possible. Technology transfer, research and innovation. So sometimes, as I said, you find projects or proposals that combine, different strategies, one or two strategies. Okay, so strategies should directly address the project objectives, be realistic and feasible within resources, be participatory and inclusive, build on local strength and partnerships, and be sustainable and scalable. Okay, so if the approach is, for example, capacity building, and then after capacity building, because sometimes it can be stepwise. So you want to start. Our first approach is going through capacity building. So after we build the capacity of these people, then we bring in infrastructure development. Okay. Then when we are done with that, then we now move towards technology transfer, because we trained them, we brought in the infrastructure. We are now going to transfer this technology. Okay. And then based on that, we can now end up generating and validating local evidence through research and innovation. So these are things depending on the kind of project you are working with. Then, Then project activities, I think there's a mishap in some of these things. I think when I was now arranging the slides, I arranged them because then we need to talk about the methodology before we even get to the activities. So the methodology basically is also the approach. But this is now the detailed approach. The approach is the general thing. We are going to do capacity development. We are going to do community, community. We are going to do infrastructure development. That could be very general. But when you talk about methodology, this is exactly, if you are going to do community capacity building, how are you going to do it? If you are going to do, let's say, technology transfer, how are you going to do the technology transfer? Okay, so research and evaluation methodology. So here there are two things. Let's say we are doing research and evaluation, and there are projects where the implementation is where we are talking about development projects. There are two things here. I want us not to mix them. There are proposals you are writing, and it is just for knowledge generation. Okay, so you are not really going to deal with communities, or you might be going to deal with communities, but you're not going to build infrastructure or put anything with them. But there are projects where these are development projects where we want to do development. We want to empower communities. We want to build infrastructure for them, build their capacity. So for the first case, like scenario A, where we are talking about research and evaluation methodology, we have to describe the study design very well. So we need to describe the overall design, whether it is baseline, endline, quasi-experimental, cross-sectional, case study, mixed methods, longitudinal study. You need to tell us exactly what the study design is. Okay? Talk about target population. Who will benefit or who will be studied, including characteristics like farmers, youth, all those things, and even the numbers. Okay? Sampling, explain the sampling frame, the technique, whether it was random, it will be random, all those things. Data collection, how will data be collected? What will be the data, it's called the data management plan. What are the data management plans you have? So once you generate data, how will you handle this data? How will you store it? All that. Then data analysis, so describe how that analysis will be done, and then the ethical considerations. So this is where we are just doing research and generating information. But when we are talking about development projects, then the implementation approach is very key. So describe the overall approach, the participatory, market-based, system approach, value chain approach. Then if it is phased implementation, so we could start by piloting, then scaling up, and then consolidation or upscaling and adoption. Use adaptive management and learning to improve delivery. Okay, so if that is the approach, then let's say if it is if we are going to do participatory, then you need to describe. Then community engagement could be another approach that we are going to use when we are doing development projects. Okay, so here you explain how communities will be involved in planning, decision making, and all those things. Then partnership and collaboration. So identify key partners and their roles. So you need to tell us, fine, we are going to work, but then the approach is we are going to work with partners. Which partners are we going to work with? What are their roles? what roles will they play and what influence do they even have? Okay. Then after that, of course, I wanted us to go back to the project activities, because these project activities are informed by the methods. Okay. So let's say if, for example, the strategy, let's say we have, these are the strategies. So if it is capacity building, what activities will go into capacity building so that we achieve this? Okay, so conduct workshops as an activity, develop training manuals and materials, mentor and coach participants, evaluate learning. And so each of these, because you need to have these activities so that when you are going to do your budgeting, you budget per objective. There are donors that will ask you to budget per objective or budget per activity. So if it is infrastructure development, then the activities would include construct and upgrade facilities, procure and install equipment, ensure operation and maintenance, inspect and specify completed works. And this is where you also have to explain that once these things are bought, who is going to own them? Is it the community? Is it the university? All those things. And policy and advocacy, for example, if that is the strategy we have, then the activities would include engaging policymakers and regulators, develop policy briefs and position papers, organize policy dialogue and framework. So when you will be budgeting, you will budget along those activities. Okay. Then there's technology transfer. This is the example where I was telling you that we were using what we call living labs. So you have a lab there. It's like a farm where these things are tested and community members are allowed. Okay. So why do activities matter? They turn strategies into actionable steps. They clarify roles and resources and timelines, support effective monitoring and accountability, and increase chances of achieving results. Because without activities, how will you achieve the results? So well-planned activities ensure your strategies are implemented and implemented effectively and lead to the desired outcomes and impact. So activities are important because then you will list them. So sometimes some donors will tell you, we need you to list your activities in terms of objective, activity under that objective, outputs that will come out of that specific activity, and the outcome. So you can easily fuse it into the log frame that I was talking about. Then after the methodology that I've talked about, then we now talk about the work plan. So work plan is how will you do these things? Between this time and this time, I will be doing this. Between this time and this time, I will be doing this. So it depends on how they want it to be brought out. Some donors will ask you to do it in a Gantt chart, for example, so that they're just sure that these are the activities, this is the person that is responsible, and these are the timelines, and sometimes also the milestones. So when will we get a report, for example? So the deliverables are also attached to the work plan. So we know that month one, we are going to do project inception and planning. So that is milestone, that is now month one. And how will we, what will be the deliverables out of that activity? So you have an activity, whoever is responsible, the months it will be done, the milestone, and the deliverable that is out of it. So that you can easily track that we have, and sometimes you find that some projects are even divided into what we call work packages. So you have work package one, under each work package, there are activities and deliverables, because each activity must have a deliverable. So some activities could even have more than one deliverable. So basically, the work plan is just where you are putting the activity, whoever is responsible, the months when this will be done, and the deliverable that are attached to those objectives, those activities. Because we want an activity, each activity must have its own deliverable. Okay? Because then that helps it. That makes it very easy for us to track and say, okay, this activity, what did we get out of this activity? Was it a report? And then we must decide whether the deliverable is private or it is public, so that you know where to put it, okay? Why our work plan works? Provides a clear roadmap for implementation, helps manage time, resources, and expectations, facilitates coordination and accountability, and enables tracking of progress and timely delivery. So you need to have a work plan, and you will not go without your donor asking you for a work plan. That is very important, because then they are going to use that also to look at your budget. And sometimes even after the work plan, you are asked for an organogram
of the project management plan. How will the project be managed? This one is just a very hypothetical one. It depends on how you people have agreed. So you have the project director, the project manager, technical team. You can write whatever it is if they are researchers, all these things. So then it's very clear for them to know even the chain of command. They know there's the PI. After the PI, you have 3 co-PIs. The first co-PI is the one in charge of infrastructure development. The second one is the aquaculture expert. This one is a business. And then after that, the next layer is, another team of young researchers who are just, then the finance officer, for example. As I told you, sometimes it's good to include them. Okay. So then the key principles is clear lines of authority, defined roles and responsibility, adequate delegation, gender inclusion. Yeah, I think this is one thing that I have kept saying, that when you're writing your proposal, look at your team. Is it gender sensitive? Otherwise, if you are all males or all females, then sometimes the reviewers will look at your work not really favorably, not very favorably, because they will be like, okay, we really don't think, this one. So basically, this is just an organogram of how the project will be managed. You can put it the way you want it to be put. Then there is a monitoring and evaluation. Now, sometimes some donors will ask you to give them an idea of how you will do internal monitoring and evaluation. Some of them will come to do this by themselves. So in the event that they want you to prove how you will do monitoring and evaluation, then because then it helps. And also you can even do it even if the donor does not ask for it. It's always good to demonstrate even to the donor, even if they don't ask for it, that we have the competence, or we have a way of monitoring success and knowing where we can improve. So sometimes you want to do this like midterm review, M&E, like a midterm review, just to see where we are, so that we see if there's anything we can modify, something we can increase, something, all this. Okay. So the input. So how are we going to track it? We look at the input. You remember the other time in the log frame, or in the theory of change, we have the input, the activities, the outputs, and the impact. So we are still tracking the same, but then we want to see how much did we give you? What did you do with the money? What did we get out of it? And what impacts do we have? And ultimately, the long term, what are we looking at? Okay. So the indicators here could be, the indicators are even down here. So already we have indicators are measurable signs that show progress towards each level of the results chain. So input to impact. So percent budget utilized, staff recruited, their number, the equipment procured could be the number, and also the type, and all these things. Then the activities that were done here, we have trainings that were conducted in terms of number, the field visits in terms of number, the output, how many farmers were trained, how many demo units were established, the outcomes, how many farmers are adopting these practices, what is the percent increase in yield, and all these things. So basically, and then how do we verify? Means of verification is also important. How do we verify the inputs? Financial records, procurement records, all that. Then reporting schedule. How do we report? Quarterly, monthly, all this depends on the donor. Okay. A strong M&E system provides the right information to the right people at the right time to improve performance and deliver lasting impact. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So that is why M&E is very important. And then we have the risk management. Most donors will ask you to tell us what risks do you foresee? How likely are they to occur? What will the impact in the event that they occur? How will you mitigate them? And then residual risk. After we have solved those, after we've dealt with this risk, how likely are they to occur after mitigation? Sometimes this one does not exist in some cases, but some donors will always say, fine, even when you deal with it, what are the chances that there's still a chance that something will happen? So, for example, a risk could be extreme weather events. How likely is it to happen? Highly likely. The impact will also be very high. Mitigative measures, we are using climate resilient technologies, diversified production systems, so that in the event that the rains destroy one of our crops, then we have money on the other side. Develop early warning technologies, all this. So basically, this is just about the risk, the likelihood of that risk occurring, the impact that will be there if it occurs, and then the mitigation measures. How will we mitigate?
okay? And then the residual risk after mitigation. So after you've mitigated, what will now be the overall risk after after, how do you say, after mitigating? Then the sustainability I was talking about, when you are writing it, you need to tell us how there's the financial sustainability, the institutional sustainability, community ownership, policy integration, and capacity building. Okay. So financial sustainability is ensure adequate and reliable financial resources to maintain and scale project outcomes. At the end, once the money is done, what will happen? Do you have ways like diversify? How do you diversify income sources, establish cost recovery mechanisms where appropriate? How will the institutional sustainability also be ensured? So these are things that most donors will ask: how will this be sustained? Okay. Then we talk about the budget. Okay. Now the budget, as I said, is aligned to your objectives and is also informed by the activities you have. So if you have activities that you want to achieve or you want to do, then these activities are the ones that are going to inform your budget. Okay. You cannot do a budget without activities. That's why you must have very detailed activities so that you can easily pull your you don't want to give lump sum figures unless the donor wants it. So if it is capacity building, you don't just say, I'm allocating 1 million shillings for capacity building. You need to tell us what activities are going into this capacity building and how much is each activity. Okay. So like budgetary categories, sometimes I say personnel. So personnel, the description here is salaries and benefits for staff working on the project. Example could be project managers, officers, and staff and stuff like this. Then key consideration, the money spent here will be based on roles, time, and effort, and it's going to follow. It is also going to follow organizational salary scales. Okay, so sometimes you are told to justify, and sometimes you are told the justification should be on a separate sheet. But most of the time, you do budget and justify. So for equipment, you are going to tell us what equipment you need. The example. So this is just an example. So what will that be? How do you describe that? So like equipment, what do you need that money for? I need that money for purchase of durable equipment for project use. Examples of them, you give examples here, or you can just list them, and then consideration. Okay. And then justification, again, as I said, justification basically is just why do you need a 4-wheel drive car that will cost $1 million, for example? Why do you need it? So you need to justify why that is needed. Or if you have put a certain value, how did you arrive at that value? Was it based on government rates? Was it based on university regulations? Was it based on a pro forma invoice that you got from the company that is supposed to be supplying whatever it is that you are asking for? So basically justification. So budget is not just numbers. Okay. And then you also need to get value for money. So you need to tell me this is the money I need to achieve this, and this is how I'm going to I'm justifying that budget. Okay. So I don't want to go into, then after that, of course, you have the attachment. So depending on what the donor wants, they will either ask you for CVs, and sometimes you just need a 2-page CV or a 3-page CV. So in that case, then you need to tell your consortium members to only focus on what is important. Somebody could have a 30-page CV, but then these donors do not want to read 30 pages. They don't have that time. If the proposal alone is supposed to be 15 pages, how do you expect me to read a CV that is 30 pages? So I need a 2-page CV or a 3-page CV from each of the people. And you must make sure they align. So sometimes, even before the end, we will want you to have a section where you are talking about the partners, okay, the consortium, talking about this person, this is their expertise, this is what they are bringing on board. This person, this is their expertise, this is what they are bringing to the team, okay? So the attachments will depend on what the donor wants, okay? Sometimes they want just the CVs and letter of support from the institutions. Sometimes they'll ask you for organizational profile, annual report, financial statements, maps and locations, depending on what they want. So just read carefully what they need and provide whatever is needed so that they don't, your project is not thrown out just on technicalities. I want to stop it here because then there are things we've talked about, so many things today, and I want to push a few of them to tomorrow, because then tomorrow we still have to talk about quite a number. We'll start from where we have started.
I want someone to, now we can unmute and just say whatever it is so far, if we have a question or a comment, because I want us to have a plenary and then we will stop after that plenary. Then tomorrow we start, I will show you an example of a template and give examples of how then we were feeling into the template of the concept and the full proposal, so that we also see basically in action, how does it look like? And then tomorrow I'll also talk a little bit about consultancies as a means of also mobilizing resources by researchers. So I will stop my presentation here, and then I will now open the plenary so that we can have a few minutes, maybe some 30 minutes or 20 something minutes, depending on the kind of discussions we are going to have before we stop. I think we've also been sitting for long. Now the floor is open to everyone. It does not have to be a question. It can be a comment. It can be anything that is relevant to proposal writing. Here we go. I don't want to call people's names. Just raise your hand or just unmute and say something. It does not have to be a question. If it is, I'm not answering questions alone. Now it's now a discussion. So everybody is going to throw in their thoughts here and there. And thank you for sitting for almost 3 hours of the presentation. I want to end it here for today, and then we'll continue tomorrow. But I want to open up the floor for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for a clear and precise presentation. My name is Colin. I just have a small, it's not a question, but just wondering on how to build these partnerships and collaborations. There's some calls we have seen which says you must have a partner maybe from Europe or wherever, and you happen that you don't have a contact in such a place. So you end up shying away from trying the call. How should we go about such? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I will give in my thinking, and then I will open it to someone else. As I say, we have different experiences and we have dealt with these things differently. One of the best ways to get people is through LinkedIn. I have reached out to people. It's a time we were doing a proposal and we needed someone from Honduras, actually. Yeah, so it was a requirement. So I just went out and it's like I don't know what it's called stalking, but I was looking out and within my field, I just, through search and I finally found someone from Honduras and I reached out. We did the proposal. Unfortunately, it did not go through. But yes, you can look up people on LinkedIn just to see the countries where they come from. If you have the premium version of LinkedIn, then you are able to filter even by country, by country, and also by field of research. So that's one way through which you can reach out to people. The second thing is through the papers that you read. So within your field, you have affiliations. So let's say if you're in the field of medicine and specifically maybe cancer management or cancer treatment, then it means that there are people who are writing research in that area. So if you really just go out and start looking out for people. Plus, I'm going to show you tomorrow a platform where you can find past projects, current projects in your field of research. You can group them by country. So it's very easy for you to know that when I want somebody from Germany, I'm going to filter by Germany, and then I'm going to look at a specific area of research, and I'm going to get researchers in that specific area. So I'm going to show you a platform where you will see all projects that are running and those that have ended, and you can filter by country. You can also filter by field of research, and I know that will be a very good place to start. Anybody else wants to give their opinion? So, Karen, tomorrow I'm showing you a platform where you can see all the grant information. You can filter by country and filter by field of research. Then that increases the chances of you finding someone. Then you reach out and tell them, I saw you did a project like this, or you are currently running a project like this. There's a similar one that is interesting. Is it possible for us to collaborate? Because their information will be on that platform.
Thank you so much, and we're looking forward for tomorrow.
Yeah, so tomorrow, make sure you attend. Yes, Benson?
Thank you once again. My concern and comment would be on the area of when you're still nurturing, maybe in these very basic stages, maybe for long-term researchers with established networks, a different ballgame. But I'm thinking in terms of people just starting out for the first time, sharing out responsibility in an equitable, sensible, and flawless manner. How do we deal with this? Because sometimes people have very different styles of approaching. Like in your case, you've talked of Honduras, maybe even language, maybe Spanish here, English there. Combining these things and coming up with sensible, flawless kind of a document. I think that's another area of challenge that we need to maybe address ourselves to. Or what do you think?
True, I agree that sometimes you're told to reach out to, you need a partner in Japan or in China. They don't speak English. They don't, so you have somebody, see, this is a very good person that I can work with, but language is becoming a barrier. So I think these are inherent challenges that we meet in the field of research. So I don't know how we negotiate or we go around them, but the good thing is at least these days there's AI, so communication is now not very difficult, but it's still very challenging because then writing becomes a bit problematic when you are not able to speak the same language. You are in a meeting and you barely understand each other, so it becomes a problem when this thing. So it's, I don't know how then to answer that straight away, but the world is also opening up. Dr. Ferdinand.
Thank you. I need to first of all appreciate your precise and very insightful presentation. Number two, I just want to find out whether as we proceed, there are times we may not be responding to a call, but we want to develop a concept note to seek, for example, resources to either equip, a lab, a laboratory, or a computer science room. I mean, what are some of the salient features of developing a good concept note that can be in a form of seeking for a grant? And how can you be able to access potential partners and collaborators? I do not know what your comment would be.
Thank you. I'll give my comment. Does anybody want to throw in their thoughts before I say something? As I said, here we are now just sharing our opinions because then we exchange ideas. Maybe someone has already had that experience before. And if I insist that I'm the one who's going to give my ideas, then maybe I'm also locking out other people. So even as whatever I'm giving is just my ideas based on my experience, they might not be the exact answers. So I want someone to throw in that. Dr. Ferdinand is asking, maybe you are not reaching out for grants, but then you want to develop a concept that you can now use to, ask for, solicit for maybe equipment or, something to help in the lab and stuff like this. What goes into a very good concept that can be convincing? And how then can you find potential partners that can either fund or can either give you these resources, or you can work together with them to to look for these resources. Anybody wants to give their opinion on this? Just unmute and give your opinion. I will also give my opinion. Anyone at all?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Humphrey, go ahead.
It's not Humphrey, this is Vicky. I'm using Humphrey's laptop. My name is Vicky Webuye.
Yes.
I just want to appreciate I'm a PhD student in sociology department. I have gained quite a bit of knowledge on how to write the academic proposal, which may not be the one that wants to attract donors outside there. I'm getting a bit of a challenge, like how to arrange and align my proposal with the subject matter that I want to study. Because sometimes you look at the study and it looks like maybe it's a weak one, or you don't know how to strengthen. Maybe in tomorrow's presentation, I may gain more, but I am very, very glad. At least I've picked quite a bit in what you have said. Thank you very much for that good presentation.
Thank you. So for proposal writing, especially academic proposal writing and publishing, there is a course that is coming up. Kevin, is it coming up next week? But next month. But we always do this periodically. We had one that already was gone. So there's no problem. Tomorrow, if I get time, because they are not really so different. You know, the concept is the same. The gist is always the same. So I will be able to touch on that a little bit. So I'll give my ideas on Dr. Ferdinand's question also as we think through, and this is just my idea. One thing is sometimes we want to be proactive. I think that's what Dr. Ferdinand is speaking to. So he does not want to sit there and say that I will keep looking out. When I see a call, then I will develop a concept and send. So he wants to say, is it possible for me to write a concept and then based on this concept, try to reach out to potential people who can, help me get this equipment, or reach out to other people that we can write with, then we can be able now to send it out to other people. So writing a concept is a good thing. And I've always seen this with even my mentor. We write concepts and keep them. Sometimes when a very good idea comes, says, Nicholas, can we meet tomorrow? There's something that I've thought of. Then we write it and keep it somewhere so that when a call comes, we just throw in our concept. Now, just like a proposal, like whatever it is, a good concept, of course, must tell us what the problem is, where the gap is. So you tell us at the University of Nairobi, as an example. The University of Nairobi, we have 1,000 students who are doing human anatomy, but we currently only have 3 specimen to work with. So that is the problem that is there. But then they need these things to understand human anatomy, develop medicine, understand how the system works. So the fact that they don't have this makes it very difficult for us now to develop very good doctors. I'm just giving an example. So therefore, I'm developing, or the lab is developing this concept, or if it is computers, we are developing this concept so that we can acquire computers that can help us now get ABCD. Now, where you send it now is a very tricky thing, because then you either send it out when there's a call, but there are institutions, for example, private institutions like in Kenya, for example, you write a very good concept and send to M-Pesa Foundation, also Safaricom Foundation. I've seen they have equipped institutions, like my institution, I think, benefited from the Safaricom Foundation. They established an AI center at Maseno. So it was just a concept from a researcher. So sometimes when you get a very good, compelling problem and you address it very well, you can easily even send it to some of these donors, and they will give you money. The only thing is rejections do occur. Not always it's not always that you send and then it comes with positive feedback. So you can, but then reaching out to knowing where to send it is now the challenge. So sometimes you have to wait until there's a call, or you just try to gamble and say, okay, let me just send it out there. The worst I can get is a no. So you can keep trying. But what goes into a good concept is just the problem. If the problem is very clear and you say how then getting those computers or getting that equipment will help improve the situation, if it is convincing, I'm very sure someone can listen. I want to get someone else to talk. I want us just to push it to another 10 minutes or 9 minutes, so that we stop at 12:30, and then we meet tomorrow. I think we have covered quite a bit today, and I would also not want to also sit you down for too long, and also sit myself down also for too long. So does anybody have anything else to add, or a comment or a question? If not, then we can meet tomorrow. But if there is, then this is the moment.
Yes, Nicholas, this is Peter.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, from the University of Nairobi. And I'm concerned about this budgeting. You did indicate earlier that one of the reasons that we failed is because of poor budgeting. Sometimes, and from my experience, whenever you're trying this, you're forced at some point to go guessing figures, which I tend to think could be one of the reasons that some of us have failed completely in getting some of these projects. So I don't know, what would you advise? How exactly do we go about it so that we can come up with something that is a budget that is realistic, that's a bit clear? Because sometimes you find that some of these costs are not very clear on what to include the budget, or they just give you percentages, and sometimes fitting it becomes a bit difficult. What do you say about that? How do you go about it so that we don't have to keep on losing on this?
I want to give an example based on a proposal that we are still currently working on. And as I was saying, this donor is not going to require financial report from you. So they are telling you that we are giving you the money, do your work, whatever it is, we are just going to give you the money. But before we give you the money, you must provide evidence for those figures. So they are saying that if you're telling me that a flight from Mombasa to Nairobi, if you're going to do 3 flights as part of local travels, then you need to show us where that figure came from. So then it means that we have to go to the website of the company and take a screenshot of a round flight from Mombasa to Kenya and then say, this was as of this date. And then you just explain in the justification that these rates do change, but it might not be too much, especially if the project is going to start in the next 2 years, or in the next 1 year, or in the next 2 months. So one way, and I have seen it now, I think my mentor has now told me that this is how what we are going to do all the time, even if the donor does not ask for it, is try to prove to them that these values are realistic based on this. So if it is equipment, let's say you want to get a microscope, get a quote, like a pro forma invoice from a company that supplies microscopes. And then when it accompanies your budget, it might be an extra thing, but most donors will look at it as something extra, and you are trying to go out of your way to show them how you arrived at that budget. Because sincerely speaking, sometimes we speculate a lot, and then these people come to read, and then they think like, I think this is either too exaggerated or this is too little for this. So also based on your own expertise knowledge, then you can see how much then that costs. But the best way that I have seen, and this is what we are going to do, is always getting evidence. So if it is about allowances, what does how do you call them? CSR, Commission for Remuneration and something. SRC, what does SRC provide for a lecturer of this position, for example? So you could easily, in the justification is where it's good to say that this cost is based on this. This amount is based on the current market value obtained on this date. So it's good to sometimes provide those evidences. There are those that ask for them expressly, but I have seen that now my mentor is now advising that in future we will be going out of our way to explain where those values came from. So if we are going to pay a stipend to a student, what is the basis for this stipend? If they are going to pay school fees for them, where is the fee structure or the fee statement from the university? So that we are sure, whoever's reading your proposal is sure that you're not just guessing things, but these are the actual values because you are attaching these documents. Tomorrow I'll show you, parts of, maybe not the entire proposal, but parts of them, and how we did explanations in our budgeting parts. Because some of them will even tell you to budget per milestone. So they will tell you, fine, if you budget per activity, no problem. But we are going to give you money in tranches. So we want that if you have 5 milestones, we are going to pay you money per milestone. So tell us what will constitute the first milestone, what activities will be there, and how much each of those activities will cost. And then you give us the total, so that we give you money in one tranche for that milestone, another tranche for the next milestone. So budgeting now depends on the details you need will depend on the donor you're dealing with.
Thank you.
I will take this back to my colleague Kevina to give us a way forward so that we stop here and then we meet tomorrow at 9. And
Thank you so much.
if any questions come up, then just keep them, and then tomorrow we will start with them. Okay.
Yes, so thank you so much, Dr. Nicholas. That was a great presentation. And I think that concludes our day 1 of the Resource Mobilization and Grants Management training. Our training is going to continue tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the notes and the recordings will all be shared tomorrow after the training. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to add the attendance list in the chat for those who have not been able to fill in their names. And I will end the meeting in 2 minutes. Thank you.